Cold open. The lever beneath mercy. There were 73 bells in the chamber beneath St. Orsan's Cathedral. 39 were about to ring because of Cassian Rook. They hung beyond the mercy engine in ordered rows, polished mouths turned down toward 73 beds. Nurses had transferred 34 patients to ordinary machines, direct donors, or a 6-hour flywheel. Gold threads still ran from 39 bells to the engine's revolving heart. The threads trembled with borrowed years. Some came from nobles who had purchased a second youth. Some came from generals whose failing lungs had been made new. 3 belonged to poets. 1 belonged to a judge Cassian had once admired. Several belonged to children of wealthy houses, though none of those children had chosen the machinery that kept them breeding. Cassian knew every name. He had written them into the plain black ledger beneath his arm because he would not permit himself the cowardice of calling them numbers. Above him, beyond 200 feet of stone and gilded prayer, the capital celebrated the Festival of Mercy. Choirs filled the cathedral nave. White-cloaked heroes stood beneath windows painted with scenes of impossible healing. Outside, 500,000 citizens waited for the archbishop to light the great halo and promise another year without plague. Farther east, iron gates were closing around Low Bell. By sunrise, imperial fire crews would pump sanctified oil through its drains. The newspapers would call the district disease. The heroic Concord would call the burning necessary. 11,000 people would become a footnote beneath a picture of the archbishop looking tired and brave. Cassian's younger sister was among those 11,000. The mercy engine offered a way to save her. It offered a way to save all of Low Bell. That truth was what made the choice monstrous rather than simple. His gloved left hand rested on the iron kill lever. The metal was warm. He could feel the pulse of the machine through it, a slow mechanical heartbeat produced by stolen childhoods. Round the central core, nested rings of brass turned without touching. Light poured through their engraved channels and became healing in the hospitals above. With every revolution, somewhere in the empire, a registered pauper lost a little strength. A factory child woke with white in her hair. An orphan's heart aged a month. A prisoner forgot his own face. The engine did not create mercy. It moved suffering to people the capital had decided not to count. Archbishop Halbrecht stood on the far side of the chamber, immaculate amid the steam. His ivory robes did not carry a speck of soot. A gold lens covered his left eye, rotating softly as it measured Cassian. "Release the lever," Halbrecht said. "Your sister will be treated before the hour changes. Your father will leave his cell. Low Bell will be reduced, not burned. You may choose 2,000 names to spare." It was a generous offer by the standards of men who considered entire streets an accounting error. Cassian looked through the glass wall to the dependent ward. Bed 13 held Lady Selm, who had funded 3 free schools before her kidneys failed. Bed 26 held Commander Arvin, who had once kept raiders from Low Bell's northern gate. Bed 50 held a 6-year-old boy named Pell. His mother sat beside him with both hands around one of his, whispering a story he could not hear through the glass. Breaking the engine would kill the 39 still bound to it. Not perhaps. Not eventually. Cassian had checked every valve, every reserve, every emergency line. When the core stopped, the years holding their bodies together would return to the people from whom they had been taken. The bells would ring. 39 families would learn that the miracle they trusted had ended because one man had judged a district more valuable than their grief. His allies waited in the service tunnels. They had asked for another hour. Hero Seraphine Vale was trying to reach the cathedral. If she believed the evidence, perhaps she could halt the cleansing order without blood. Perhaps Cassian had built his life on perhaps. Perhaps the law would listen. Perhaps evidence would matter. Perhaps an honest clerk could place the right record before the right judge and make cruelty ashamed of its own handwriting. His mother was dead because he had believed perhaps for one night too many. The first fire siren sounded from Low Bell. Halbrecht extended a gold key across the dark floor. "You wanted justice," the archbishop said. "This is the only form justice has ever taken. Choose who pays." Cassian studied the 73 bells. I know, he said. He pulled the lever. The Mercy engine screamed with every voice it had stolen. Gold light fractured. The great rings tore free of their silent paths. Rivers of time burst outward through the cathedral foundations, passing through stone as if stone were memory. In the ward, the first bell began to move, then a second, then 37 more. Cassian kept his hand on the lever while they rang. He did not close his eyes. He did not tell himself that the dead were guilty, or that their lives meant less, or that there had been no other choice. There had always been another choice. It was simply a choice that would have killed different people. The last bell fell silent. In the sudden darkness, thin black lines appeared before Cassian's eyes. They joined into the shape of an open ledger. Gold edged its pages. No one else in the chamber reacted. A voice without breath entered his thoughts. Intent confirmed. Innocence knowingly sacrificed. Sacred symbol destroyed. Public hatred inevitable. Condition satisfied. The villain system is now online. Cassian stared at the words while the archbishop began to pray. Then the system offered him a reward for killing the man. To understand why Cassian did not refuse at once, it is necessary to return to the room above a clinic where a 12-year-old boy first learned that a name written correctly could still be erased. Chapter 1. The boy above the clinic. Low Bell earned its name from a foundry tower that had not rung in 60 years. The bell inside it was cracked from lip to crown, and the Empire had declined to pay for its repair. Rain nested in the fracture. Pigeons lived where the clapper should have been. Every few winters, wind moved the broken metal just enough to produce a low, unfinished note that rolled through the streets like a giant remembering pain. Cassian Rook was born 3 floors below that sound, in 2 rooms above his mother's clinic. The clinic had no license. Licenses required clean water, tiled floors, 2 university physicians, and a yearly payment larger than the building was worth. Leanna Rook possessed none of those things. She had 12 years of battlefield nursing, hands that did not shake, and a willingness to treat patients who could pay only in nails, red ends, or promises. Low Bell considered that qualification enough. Cassian's earliest memories were of names. His mother made him copy each patient's name into a brown ledger before he was old enough to understand the illnesses written beside them. She corrected his letters with a blunt thumbnail. A name, she told him, was the beginning of care. If he wrote burned man or sick girl, he had already made it easier to forget what happened next. So he wrote Daniel Voss, blast injury, left hand. Eerie Tem, winter cough. Old mare Finn, iron dust in lungs. He wrote carefully even when the queue filled the stairs and foundry whistles called workers back before their bandages had dried. His father came home after midnight wearing the blue-gray coat of the district watch. Tomas Rook was broad, slow-spoken, and incapable of ignoring a crooked door hinge. He repaired the clinic between patrols. He also taught Cassian that law was a promise ordinary people made to one another before powerful people turned it into a weapon. A bad order is not a law, Tomas said whenever Cassian complained about watch regulations. It is only a man hoping your uniform will obey for you. Cassian believed him. Children are generous with belief when the adults they love have not yet been punished for deserving it. Mira arrived when Cassian was 15. She was small, furious, and born during the cracked bell's only clear note in living memory. Leander said the sound frightened her into breathing. Tomas said it was the district announcing that it had produced someone important. Cassian, who had expected an interesting baby and received a red-faced creature that screamed whenever he touched her blanket, required several weeks to agree. By the time Mira could walk, she followed him everywhere. She stole his ink. She slept beneath the clinic table during busy nights. At 4, she corrected patients who shortened Cassian's name to Cass. At 5, she learned to open the locked cupboard using a spoon and a strip of wire. Lehanner found the method impressive enough that punishment was delayed by admiration. Those years were pert but not joyless. Lobel had roof gardens made from broken boilers, music played on pipes after shifts, and a market where 6 languages argued over the price of onions. On Founders' Night, workers hung lanterns from the old bell tower and projected shadow plays across the smog. Tomas cooked badly. Leander pretended the stew was medicinal. Cassian learned that dignity did not require comfort, only witnesses. He also learned how the capital viewed them. Imperial census officers came each spring in white gloves. They measured doors, counted beds, and marked children for charity examinations. The examinations were said to protect the poor from hereditary disease. Every family received a brass sun token afterward, proof that the Empire had noticed them. Leander distrusted free gifts from institutions that charged for clean water. She could not refuse. A child without a sun token could not enter a public school, apprentice to a licensed trade, or receive emergency healing. When Cassian was 9, an examiner pressed a gold instrument to his chest and asked whether he loved the Empire. Cassian said he loved Low Bell. The examiner marked something on a form. Was that the wrong answer? He asked his father later. Tomas considered. It was an honest answer. That is not what I asked. His father smiled without humor. Then you are old enough for government work. Cassian decided that day that he would learn the language of forms. It seemed to him that a clever person could protect Low Bell by understanding the marks made about it. If the Empire hid its intentions in ledgers, he would become better at ledgers than anyone in the Empire. Leander encouraged him. Tomas worried quietly. Mira, still a baby, ate one corner of his first book of civil codes. At 12, Cassian could quote regulations that district inspectors had forgotten. At 13, he helped 3 widows appeal unlawful rent seizures. At 14, he found a tax error that returned 200 crowns to the foundry cooperative. People began bringing him notices along with their injuries. For a little while, it worked. That was the most dangerous lesson of Cassian's childhood. The law occasionally yielded when pressed correctly. The small victories taught him to trust a door because it had opened twice. He did not yet understand that someone on the other side was deciding when to lock it. The first warning came in Leander's patient ledger. Cassian was 15, Mira was 6 months old, and a boy named Orrin Pell arrived at the clinic with the hands of an 8-year-old and the white hair of an old man. Orrin's mother carried a brass sun token stamped with the date of his charity examination. The date was 3 days earlier. Chapter 2. The first missing year. Orrin Pell had climbed the foundry stairs every morning for 2 years without losing his breath. 3 days after his charity examination, he could not cross Leander's clinic without resting. His mother said the change began with a fever. The Imperial examiner had assured her that fatigue was normal after the blessing. Orrin had received his sun token, a sweet cake, and a promise that the Mercy hospitals would accept him if he ever became seriously ill. By the time the fever broke, pale lines had appeared around his eyes. A strip of hair above his left temple had turned white. Leander tested his blood, his lungs, and the strength in his hands. She asked about factory chemicals and bad water. Nothing explained the speed of the decline. Cassian sat beside Orrin and copied his name into the ledger. Do not write old, the boy said. I wasn't going to. The other children called me that. Cassian turned the book so Orrin could see. The letters were neat and dark. Orrin Pell. Exhaustion after charity examination. Sudden whitening of hair. Cause unknown. That is what happened, Cassian said. Not what you are. Orrin studied the page, suspicious of comfort but satisfied by accuracy. Within a month, 4 more children arrived with the same symptoms. All had recently received sun tokens. One had gained 3 inches of height in 10 days and lost 2 teeth. Another could no longer remember the face of her grandmother, who had died the previous winter. Leander sent reports to the district health office. The reports were returned for incomplete seals. Cassian added the seals and sent them again. The office replied that no approved physician had verified the symptoms. Leander found an approved physician willing to sign. His license was suspended 2 days later for unrelated accounting irregularities. Tomas made inquiries through the watch. He learned that similar complaints had come from 5 per districts. Each report had been classified separately, preventing the pattern from appearing in official summaries. That was the first piece of imperial procedure Cassian came to hate, not the lie, but the division of truth into boxes small enough that no single box looked dangerous. He built his own summary. At night, While Eleanor slept between patients, he spread copied records across the clinic floor. 31 children, 11 examination teams, the same brass instruments, the same fever, the same white hair or lost memory or sudden weakness. He drew lines in charcoal until the pattern looked like the roots of a poison tree. The records also contained numbers written beside each child's token. Most were fractions. 1/12, 3/40, 700ths. Cassian assumed they measured medicine until he noticed that the fractions rose with the severity of the symptoms. Oren's token bore 11/12, 11 months. Cassian thought the idea was absurd. He said it aloud only to hear how absurd. Eleanor did not laugh. She took the token, held it near the lamp, and found a second mark hidden within the sunburst, a tiny hourglass. "Keep this from Mira," she said. It was the first time Cassian heard fear in his mother's voice. Tomas brought the token to a record sergeant he trusted. The sergeant promised to search the central registry. The next evening, 2 Imperial officers visited the clinic and reminded Eleanor that possession of altered charity property was a crime. They took Oren's token. They took Cassian's copied summary. They did not take the patient ledger because Mira began screaming before they reached the cabinet, and Eleanor used the confusion to slide it behind a loose wall panel. The trusted sergeant was transferred north. Oren died before winter. His official cause of death was hereditary lung weakness. His mother received 3 silver crowns and a letter thanking her for supporting the Empire's public health research. She burned the letter in Eleanor's stove. Cassian kept the ash in an envelope, then felt foolish for keeping ash and kept it anyway. He waited for outrage. Lobel grieved, but grief did not become outrage because each family believed its sorrow was private. The newspapers printed a small notice about an unfortunate cluster of factory illnesses. Hero Seraphine Vale opened a new children's ward in the western capital. A painting showed her holding the hand of a smiling boy beneath a golden halo. Cassian wanted to hate her. He could not. Even in a painting, Seraphine's concern looked real. He began to suspect that the Empire's greatest strength was not forcing good people to become cruel. It was arranging cruelty so good people could stand one room away and never see the door. Years passed. The white-haired children in Eleanor's ledger became a recurring column rather than an emergency. Some recovered. Some aged in bursts. One 14-year-old died with the heart of a 70-year-old. Cassian counted every missing month he could estimate. By his 18th birthday, the total exceeded 200 years. He applied to the Imperial College of Law using a scholarship reserved for district applicants. The admission judges laughed at the address on his coat, then stopped laughing when he recited the fiscal harm codes backward. He won a junior clerkship in the tribunal archive. Tomas asked why he wanted to work for people who had taken Oren's token. Because they took the copy, Cassian said. The original record is still somewhere inside. Eleanor gave him a new ledger bound in black cloth. Mira, 6 years old and thin for her age, added a crooked iron ring she had found in the market. "So you look important," she said. Cassian wore it on his right hand until it became too tight, then on a chain, and eventually on his left. It had no crest and represented no family claim. Years later, nobles would assume it was a villain's signet. Cassian never corrected them. On his first morning at the tribunal, he crossed the golden bridge out of Lobel and promised himself he would return with an answer. He did not know that the same examination instrument had already touched Mira's chest. Chapter 3. Mira's winter. Mira's first collapse happened in the winter Cassian turned 22. He was cataloging property appeals when a tribunal messenger found him among the archive stacks. The message contained 6 words, "Sister ill." Come before the snow. Lobel lay only 3 miles from the imperial court. That evening it took Cassian 4 hours to reach. Snow had frozen the tram lines, and private carriages filled the cleared roads. He ran the final mile in Clerk shoes that split at both soles. Eleanor's clinic was silent when he arrived. Silence there had always meant either miracle or death. Mira lay beneath 3 blankets near the stove. At 13, she had Eleanor's dark eyes, Tomas's stubborn chin, and a patch of white hair above her left temple. Her breathing came with long spaces between each breath. A brass sun token rested on the table beside her. Cassian knew the hidden hourglass before he lifted it to the lamp. The fraction was 4/5. 4/5 of what? Mira asked. Her voice was weak, but her attention remained sharp enough to frighten him. He closed his fingers around the token. A dosage notation. You are bad at lying to people who watched you practice. Leanna stood at the foot of the bed. She had exhausted every medicine in the clinic and 3 borrowed from hospitals. We do not know, she said. That is the truth. Cassian sat beside Mira and took her hand. It was cold and dry, the hand of someone who had spent a year ill rather than a week. She made him promise 2 things. The first was that he would discover what the fraction meant. The second was that he would not turn her into an excuse for becoming unbearable. Define unbearable, he said. You know what it means. For legal clarity, no threatening clerks. No breaking into hospitals. No standing in dark rooms telling people you remember their address. I have never done the third. You thought about it with great intensity. He promised, because brothers promise impossible things when the alternative is acknowledging fear. Mira survived the night. In the weeks that followed, she recovered enough to walk, then relapsed whenever the cathedral's mercy halo flared above the capital. Cassian began charting the attacks against public healing ceremonies. Each miracle announced in the newspapers corresponded to a fever in Low Bell. When Seraphine restored sight to 40 veterans, Mira slept for 2 days. When the Emperor's failing heart was renewed, 6 children in Eleanor's ledger died before morning. Correlation was not proof. The tribunal trained clerks to say that sentence whenever proof approached a powerful person. Cassian needed access to the restricted health accounts. He earned it slowly. He arrived before senior clerks, corrected their sums, and never appeared offended when they credited his work to themselves. He learned which magistrates gambled, which archivists drank, which doors failed to latch during rain. He became useful without becoming visible. The work changed him. At home, Mira complained that he spoke like a regulation. Tomas asked when he had last slept through a night. Leander told him that knowledge purchased with the loss of tenderness was usually overpriced. Cassian insisted he was fine. He had not yet begun wearing the black glove. The scar through his eyebrow came later. But the expression people would one day call villainous was already forming, the stillness of a man who placed every reaction behind a locked door so no opponent could use it. In the 5th year of his clerkship, he found an account category named Distributive Mercy Recovery. It contained no patient names. Only district numbers, age bands, and quantities measured in day units. Low Bell's yearly contribution filled 12 pages. At the bottom, the recovered days became inputs to 3 programs: Imperial Vitality, Concord Heroic Reserve, and Mercy Engine Continuance. Cassian copied nothing. The archive tracked ink, paper, and impressions. Instead, he memorized the first page, returned to Low Bell, and wrote it from memory into the black ledger. He repeated the process for 4 months. Mira read the finished columns beside him. They took 6 years from me, she said. 5 years and 9 months that we can prove. I am comforted by the precision. He expected anger. Mira looked sad instead. You are going to do something unbearable now, she said. I am going to follow the evidence. That is how you say it. Cassian had enough proof to ruin a minor official. He did not yet have enough to stop the system. The account showed extraction but not authorization. Some ministry would blame an unsupervised program, punish a registrar, rename the category, and continue. He needed the founding ledger of the Mercy Engine. That ledger was kept in the tribunal-sealed archive, accessible only during an active death inquiry involving imperial property. 3 weeks later, a foundry boiler exploded in Low Bell and killed 46 workers. The tribunal ordered Cassian to amend the death list from 46 to 12 because 34 workers lacked current residency stamps. For the first time in his career, the Empire placed a false death ledger directly into his hands. It expected him to sign. Interlude. The Winter Ledger. Mira did not recover from her first collapse in a single hopeful morning. Recovery came as a series of negotiations with stairs. On the first day she sat up. On the third she crossed the room. On the 6th, she tried to descend to the clinic and woke an hour later on the landing with Cassian holding her shoulders. She accused the staircase of moving. Cassian accused her of trying to win an argument with gravity. Gravity is at least honest about wanting me down, she said. The Leander prescribed broth, sleep, and an end to tribunal papers at the bedside. Cassian complied with 2. He brought appeal files into the room and read them silently while Mira slept. Each file concerned a person reduced to a category. An injured Mason became temporary loss of function. A widow became dependent claimant. A child with white hair became nonconforming symptom report. Cassian began rewriting the categories in the margins with names. The practice earned him reprimands and eventually changed nothing. It also formed the habit that would define the Black Ledger years later. Systems preferred categories because categories could be balanced. Names resisted balance. A category could be sacrificed for efficiency. A named child demanded someone admit what efficiency meant. Tomas watched his son work from the doorway. You cannot carry every case home, he said. They are lighter than people. That is not the danger. Tomas removed his watch coat and sat beside the stove. He told Cassian about his first year in uniform, when a food right reached Lobel's grain store. The official report described a violent mob. Tomas remembered mothers holding bowls. His commander ordered the watch to protect the locked store until prices stabilized. By the second night, a boy died against the gate. Tomas opened the store, the district gate. His commander demoted him. The grain owner sued. Years later, official histories credited the Imperial Relief Office for preventing famine was opening it lawful. Cassian asked, "No, was it right?" Tomas looked at Mira beneath the blankets. It was necessary. That is not always the same thing as right. What is the difference? A necessary act can still leave a debt. Calling it right tempts you to collect praise instead of paying. Cassian thought the distinction overly humble. He had not yet stood at the mercy lever. Mira woke and demanded the rest of the story. Tomas admitted that 3 elderly people lost winter grain because the store emptied early. The district shared what remained, but one died before spring. He still visited her daughter every Founder's Night. Did opening the store kill her? Mira asked. Hunger killed her. The loner helped. Winter helped. My choice changed where the grain went. That was not what I asked. Tomas smiled. You sound like your brother. He avoids answers with more words. Cassian threw a folded sock at her. She lacked the strength to throw it back, so Leonard did on her behalf. For several weeks, the family arranged life around Mira's breath. Tomas took extra patrols to pay for medicine. Leonard slept in a chair. Cassian requested leave and was denied because the tribunal expected junior clerks to have fewer family emergencies than senior ones. Magistrate Boss found him asleep over a filing desk and asked what was wrong. Cassian told him about Mira without mentioning the mercy extraction. The next morning, a box of imported lung tonic arrived at the clinic, paid anonymously. It helped. That gift complicated everything Cassian later learned about Boss. The magistrate was not pretending to care. He could buy medicine for one sick girl and defend a machine that sickened thousands. Personal kindness and institutional cruelty occupied him without canceling each other. Cassian returned the empty bottle with a note of thanks. Years later, Boss kept the note inside his private codebook. On the night he signed Plague Order 7, his hand rested over Cassian's careful handwriting. Mira improved by spring. She never regained the endurance she had before. She learned to hide exhaustion from Melaner and failed to hide it from Cassian. He responded by planning every walk, meal, and appointment until Mira threatened to move into the bell tower for privacy. You are not my schedule, he said, then stopped treating me like a late filing. They compromised. Cassian could ask once whether she needed help. Mira would answer honestly once. Neither kept the agreement perfectly. During this period, Mira began studying mechanisms. Her illness prevented foundry apprenticeship, but Brentalo brought small broken devices to the clinic. She repaired clocks, pump valves, and once a Hero Day music box that played the anthem backward afterward. She understood systems physically. Pressure moves somewhere. Heat came from something. Every output required an input. When Cassian showed her the Distribute to Mercy accounts years later, she recognized the structure before he did. It is a pump, she said. You keep reading it like a law. It is administered through law, but built like a pump. If the west pipe fills, something leaves the east. She drew the network in charcoal across a layer's table. Hospitals and hero reserves on one side. District examinations, prisons, and foundries on the other. The Mercy engine at the center. Cassian had spent years searching for fraudulent officials. Mira showed him a machine functioning exactly as designed. That night, he added a new column to the black ledger, benefit received. Until then he had recorded only harm. The second column forced him to name the patient whose healing corresponded to each extraction. It did not excuse the theft. It prevented him from imagining that destroying the network would hurt only guilty people. Enter approved. A ledger with one column is a speech, she said. And with two, a beginning. Cassian thought knowledge of both columns would protect him from becoming cruel. In truth, it would merely make his later choice informed. The winter also changed the way Lobel saw him. Until then, Cassian had been a Lanner serious son who knew how to appeal fines. After Mira's collapse, families began bringing him sun tokens in secret. He examined each beneath the lamp and copied the hidden hourglass. Some parents wanted lawsuits. Some wanted medicine. One father wanted Cassian to name an examiner he could attack. Cassian refused to provide the name. The father accused him of protecting officials. A week later, the man assaulted the wrong examiner and disappeared into prison. His daughter's extraction increased under the category of dependent punishment. The event taught Cassian that information released without a path to action could become another weapon against desperate people. From then on, he controlled evidence tightly. He told himself secrecy protected claimants. Often it did. It also made him the person deciding who knew what and when. Mira noticed before anyone else. You like being the locked cabinet, she said. The cabinet keeps records safe. The cabinet also gets to decide when the room is ready. He promised to create shared copies. He did, but kept the most dangerous page alone. Years later, the uncounted would inherit the same structure, a circle built to challenge hidden authority, dependent on Cassian's private memory. No villain system created that flaw. It merely found a place already prepared for power. When Mira was strong enough to climb the clinic stairs without stopping, she carried the black ledger to the roof. Together they watched the Mercy halo turn above the Capitol. A gold pulse crossed the clouds. Somewhere below, a child began to cough. Mira wrote one question on the ledger's inside cover: what does the miracle cost, and who was allowed to agree? Cassian never erased it. That mattered. It was not salvation. Chapter 4. At Clerk among lions, the tribunal called its central chamber the Hall of Equal Measure. Two carved lions stood above the doors, one holding a crown and the other a loaf of bread, as if stone could make those things weigh the same. Cassian had worked beneath them for 7 years. He knew the hall's ceremonial promises and its practical habits. Poor defendants entered through the eastern door, where rained blue and advocates charged by the minute. Noble defendants entered through a private garden. Evidence against a ministry required 3 seals. Evidence supplied by a ministry required none. The law did not say that a worker without a residency stamp was less dead. It merely permitted the tribunal to define which deaths counted toward compensation. The foundry report lay on Cassian's desk with 34 names removed. Magistrate Orlin Voss waited by the window while Cassian read it. Voss was a handsome man in his 50s with silver cuffs and the soothing voice of someone who had never needed to raise it. He had mentored Cassian, recommended him for restricted archive work, and once paid for Mira's medicine without being asked. Cassian had spent years believing Voss represented the best possible form of imperial power. Residency status is not my department, Cassian said. Today it is. The bodies were recovered from an imperial foundry. 34 trespassers were present in an industrial zone. They worked there. Voss sighed as if disappointed by a student's attachment to an easy mistake. If we record 46 employees, the ministry admits it hired unregistered labor. Compensation multiplies. The foundry closes during inquiry. 4,000 lawful workers lose wages. 12 families receive full benefits under this version. Under yours, everyone suffers while appeals consume the money. It was not a foolish argument. The tribunal rarely offered Cassian the relief of obvious evil. Their families will receive nothing, he said. Their families are not registered. They still exist. Existence and jurisdiction are not synonyms. Cassian looked at the amended list. One erased name belonged to Nerl Pell, Oren's older brother. Nerl had carried Mira home during her first collapse. He had been 29. Boss placed a pen beside the report. You are not choosing between justice and injustice. You are choosing which damage the law can contain, Cassian almost signed. He would later remember that with more shame than the refusal itself. The reasoning was familiar. Choose who pays. Protect what can be protected. Accept invisible casualties in exchange for visible stability. He opened his black ledger and copied all 46 names onto the official report, then contained the truth. He said, Boss's kindness vanished without anger. He removed Cassian's restricted seal, his archive keys, and his path to promotion. By sunset, Cassian had been reassigned to public filings on the tribunal's lowest floor. The demotion should have ended his investigation. Instead, it placed him beside people whose complaints never reached the sealed archive. For 6 months he read petitions about children weakened after charity examinations, prisoners released decades older, soldiers whose miraculous recovery coincided with the spouse's sudden decline. Each case had been rejected separately. Cassian began connecting petitioners to one another. They met at a Lanner's clinic after closing, trading copies of Sun tokens and hospital receipts. Mira named the group the Uncounted because Cassian's suggestion, preliminary association of distributive harm claimants, sounded like a disease. They included Sella Pell, Warren's mother, Rentallo, a boiler mechanic, Yara Quill, who printed illegal union notices, and Brother Caldus, a junior cathedral accountant with a stutter that disappeared when he was furious. None were revolutionaries. They wanted records corrected, treatment stopped, and their families left alive. Cassian still believed that was possible. He developed rules. No stolen original documents. No threats. No harm to witnesses. Every claim verified by 2 sources. Every erased person named. He insisted so fiercely on lawful methods that Yar once asked whether he planned to defeat the Empire by making it feel embarrassed at dinner. Institutions survive accusations, Cassian said. They do not survive evidence their own officials must recognize. Officials survive evidence all the time, not if enough people see it. Yar held his gaze. You have never watched them decide who counts as people. He had watched. He simply had no plan for a world in which he was right. The Uncounted discovered that the Festival of Mercy would include a public renewal of the Engine's founding charter. For 1 hour, the charter ledger would leave the cathedral vault and enter the Hall of Equal Measure. Brother Caldus could place Cassian on the verification team if the tribunal believed the old clerk harmless enough. Cassian spent 9 months becoming harmless. He corrected forms, accepted insults, and never again challenged Voss in public. He let colleagues assume grief over the foundry had broken his ambition. He even thanked Voss for teaching him restraint. When the appointment list was posted, Cassian Rook appeared last among 12 verification clerks. That night, Mira found him smiling at the clinic table. That expression is worse than the threatening address one, she said. I have no idea what you mean. He had learned something among the lions. Power watched anger. It watched pride. It watched the obvious knife. It rarely watched patience. Chapter 5. The Ledger That Lied. The Mercy Engine's founding ledger arrived beneath an escort of 12 Concord Knights. It was bound in white leather, though Cassian recognized the texture as something no animal had grown. Gold clasp sealed its edges. The verification clerk stood at separate desks while cathedral officials opened one page at a time. Each clerk confirmed a different portion so no single person could understand the whole. Cassian had anticipated the division. He had spent 9 months training his memory to hold columns after a glance. The charter described a benevolent machine drawing voluntary excess vitality from donors. The donor section contained no names, only classifications. Crown servants, penitent criminals, grateful beneficiaries, charitable wards. In the engineering appendix, those general categories became instructions. Crown servants were taxed at 1 day per month. Prisoners could be assessed up to half their remaining expectation. Grateful beneficiaries included the families of anyone healed by public funds. Charitable wards were children holding sun tokens. The machine did not need consent from children because the Empire acted as their guardian. Cassian verified 7 pages. Together they proved intent, but none carried the authorizing signatures. Those waited at the end of the ledger, scheduled for another clerk. During the noon recess, a service bell rang twice instead of once. Brother Caldus had arranged the signal. Somewhere above, a pipe had burst in the cathedral kitchens. Steam rolled into the verification hall. Guards moved the ledger away from the water. For 11 seconds, the final page faced Cassian. He saw the first emperor's seal, the founding archbishop, 3 ministry heads, and beneath them, the original signatures of the heroic Concord. The heroes had known, not Seraphine, who had joined the Concord decades later. But every generation inherited the charter and signed a renewal. The next renewal would occur during the festival. Cassian memorized the names. Then he noticed a second list written in faded ink beneath the signatures. It recorded projected donor depletion. Charitable wards were expected to lose between 4 and 12 years before adulthood. The engineers considered the law socially sustainable because district laborers rarely reached old age. Mira's suffering was not an accident. Oren's death was not misuse. The white hair, failed hearts, lost memories, and sudden weakness were acceptable output variants. One line broke Cassian's concentration. Public awareness risk, negligible. Donor populations lacked narrative authority. The steam cleared. A guard closed the ledger. Cassian completed his verification without visible reaction. Only when he reached a private archive stair did he lean against the stone and discover that his hands were shaking. Magistrate Boss stood at the bottom of the stair. "Did you find what you wanted?" he asked. Cassian could not know how much Boss knew. He chose caution. "I found a charter compliant with the codes in force at its founding." A clerk's answer. "I remain a clerk." Boss climbed 1 step. "There are truths that can improve a system and truths that can only collapse it. Wisdom is learning the difference." "Who taught you that?" "People who remembered the famines before the engine. Before it, 1 child and 3 died before 10. Heroes burned through their own lives stopping plagues. The throne changed hands every winter because emperors could be poisoned by a kitchen scratch. So low bell pays. Every civilization pays. Ours writes the price down." Cassian thought of the public reports with missing names. "No. It writes the price where the people paying cannot read it." Boss's gaze settled on him with weary affection. "You are too intelligent to believe innocence exists at scale. I believe consent exists. Do you? Would a starving city consent to send grain to the army defending it? Would a frightened parent consent to quarantine? Government begins where private consent fails. Then government should carry the blame in daylight." For the first time, Boss looked afraid. Not of Cassian. For him, "Forget the page," he said. "Return to your family. Let your sister receive proper treatment." "I can arrange it." The offer revealed more than a threat would have done. Boss knew about Mira. Boss knew what the engine had taken. He had allowed Cassian to investigate until the investigation became dangerous, perhaps hoping proximity to power would soften him. Cassian passed him on the stair. "You once told me the law contains damage," he said. "It does. I finally understand which side of the container I am on." At the clinic, he wrote the signatures into the black ledger. The uncounted assembled around the table. Sella wept without sound when she heard the projection for charitable wards. Bren broke a chair. Brother called us, asked 3 times whether the Concord's names were certain. Cassian said yes. Yara proposed printing everything immediately. Cassian refused. Memory alone could be dismissed as obsession. They needed a physical record or a witness with unquestioned authority. Seraphine Vale would sign the renewal at the festival. If Cassian showed her the truth before she signed, she could demand the charter in public. Mira watched him from the stair. "You think the hero will save us," she said. "I think she will save herself from becoming part of it." Mira looked toward the cathedral halo glowing above the roofs. "That is almost the same mistake," she said. Chapter 6. Hero Day. The capital loved heroes most where per people could see them. On Hero Day, the Imperial Avenue shone with gold leaf while low bell families watched behind iron rails. Concord Knights rode beneath banners stitched with victories. Children threw paper suns. Musicians played so loudly that foundry smoke seemed to move with the drums. Cassian stood among workers in his tribunal coat, holding a sealed petition beneath one arm. Seraphine Vale walked rather than rode. She wore bronze gold armor and a white cloak without embroidered titles. Whenever the parade officers urged her forward, she stopped for another child. She remembered names. She knelt to speak with people instead of making them crane upward. None of it looked performed. That made Cassian's task harder. It would have been easier to expose a hypocrite. Seraphine was beloved because she had spent 15 years earning love. She had held plague wards through the night, carried soldiers from burning forts, and once surrendered 2 years of her own life to heal strangers after a bridge collapse. The official story said her sacrifice proved the Mercy engine distributed willing generosity. Cassian now knew the engine had restored those 2 years before the week ended. Lobel's children had paid the difference. Yara created a distraction near the eastern fountain. Sella pushed forward with Oren's old portrait. Cassian slipped between parade stewards and reached Seraphine as she turned. "Tribunal petition," he said, using the phrase that required a Concord officer to accept sealed evidence. Seraphine took the packet herself. Her amber eyes moved over his demotion stripe and the district pin beneath it. "This concerns distributive mercy," Cassian said softly. 2 knights looked toward him. Seraphine's expression changed by less than a breath. She passed the petition to an aide. "Then it deserves a proper hearing. It has had 6 requests my office. Your office rejected it yesterday." The parade continued around them like water around a stone. Seraphine studied Cassian, then Sella and Oren's portrait. She asked the aide to open the packet. Inside were 31 copied case summaries and a list of the founding signatures Cassian had memorized. Seraphine read the first page. Her eyes stopped at a formula showing how her bridge miracle had been replenished. "Where did you obtain this?" "The charter you are expected to renew. That charter permits voluntary donation. Ask to see the engineering appendix." One knight reached for Cassian. Seraphine raised a hand, and the knight stopped. For one hopeful moment, Cassian saw understanding overcome training. Then every paper sun above the avenue turned black. It was not magic. Yara's print crew had coated one side with soot ink that appeared when warmed by parade lanterns. Thousands of black shapes fluttered over gold armor. The crowd gasped. On each sheet, in large legal type, was a single question. "How many years did your miracle cost?" Cassian had not approved the action. It was effective, dramatic, and impossible for officials to ignore. It was also enough to convert a private warning into a security incident. Concord Knights closed around Seraphine. Others moved into the crowd. People pushed against the rails. Cassian saw a child fall and forced his way back rather than chase the hero. He lifted the boy over the barrier as mounted officers entered the avenue. By the time he looked again, Seraphine had disappeared behind a wall of white cloaks. Yara met him in an alley 2 streets away. "They saw it," she said. "They saw disorder. They saw the question. And now they can arrest anyone who answers. They were already erasing us." Cassian wanted to tell her that procedure mattered. Instead, he remembered the line in the founding ledger: "Donor populations lack narrative authority." Yara had given them a narrative, however reckless. By evening, official broadcasts called the Black Suns a foreign attack. The petition never entered Seraphine's public docket. Little Bell's gates remained open, but Imperial inspectors appeared at every bridge. At midnight, A message arrived at the clinic without seal or signature. It contained a small bronze feather from Seraphine's cloak and an address inside the Western Mercy Hospital. Mira turned the feather over in her fingers. She wants to meet, or someone wants us to think she does. Will that stop you? No. Mira smiled faintly. Unbearable, Cassian prepared 3 copies of the evidence and left instructions for their release if he did not return. Before dawn, he crossed into the Western capital through a laundry cart and entered the hospital by the mortuary stairs. Seraphine was waiting beside a ward full of sleeping patients, without guards and without her sword. Above her, the Mercy engine's golden conduits pulse like veins. Chapter 7. The Dead Child's Receipt. Seraphine began by asking Cassian whether he had come to kill her. No, he said. You answered quickly. If I intended it, I would need to consider the question. She almost smiled, then remembered why they were there. The Western Mercy Hospital was quieter than the Lanners Clinic because wealth purchased walls thick enough to keep suffering private. Golden mechanisms floated over each bed. A warm radiance moved from patient to patient at Seraphine's presence. Cassian opened the black ledger to Orenpel's page. He placed the envelope of burned government ash beside it and explained the examination. The white hair, the token marked 11/12, and the letter thanking Oren's mother for supporting research. Seraphine listened without interruption. When he described the charter appendix, she demanded proof beyond memory. Cassian expected that. He showed her a hospital receipt Sella had found among Neryl's possessions after the foundry explosion. Neryl had paid a debt assigned to his dead brother. The charge was coded as 11 months of distributive mercy recovery. Oren's missing year had been invoiced after his death. Seraphine read the receipt twice. This could refer to treatment. Then ask your machine. She turned toward the golden apparatus. Heroes could perceive the mercy engine in ways ordinary people could not. Seraphine placed her palm against a brass column and closed her eyes. The light in the ward brightened. Mira cried out from a bed behind them. Cassian spun. He had not known she was there. Seraphine's agents had brought her from Lobel after another collapse, intending to verify the extraction claim. Mira lay beneath a healing halo, awake and furious. You kidnapped my sister, Cassian said. I admitted a dying patient, Seraphine replied, but her focus broke as she saw black lines move from Mira's chest into the column. The hero followed those lines with her sight. They joined streams coming from distant wards, prisons, schools, and examination halls. For the first time, the Mercy engine allowed one of its champions to see the donor side of the miracle. Seraphine staggered. The golden light around the patients flickered. Mira's breathing eased when it dimmed. Stop the flow, Cassian said. There are 900 patients connected to this hospital. Then lower it. I do not know how. It was an honest answer, and therefore more frightening than denial. Seraphine had spent half her life channeling power she did not understand. The Concord taught heroes to shape miracles, not to audit their source. She could close her personal link, but the engine would compensate through other circuits. She did so anyway. Gold left her armor. In the beds around them, instruments began to alarm. Cassian watched an elderly man struggle for breath. The hero restored a fraction of her link to stabilize him. Black threads returned to Mira. There, in one room, lay the entire Empire's moral machine. Every act of rescue created an unseen victim. Refusing to rescue did not make the visible patient less real. Seraphine sank into a chair. I signed 3 renewals, she said. Did you read the appendix? There was no appendix. There was. You were shown a clean copy. Then the renewal is void. Cassian felt the old hope return. Seraphine could demand the founding ledger during the festival. In front of the Emperor, the press, and the entire Concord, she could refuse her seal. She agreed. They planned for 20 minutes. Seraphine would keep Mira in the hospital until the festival, where the engine could not drain her without exposing the link. Cassian would produce witnesses. Brother Caldus would identify the hidden appendix. At the renewal, Seraphine would invoke a hero's right of conscience and force public inspection. Mira objected to being kept anywhere. She also objected to Cassian using the phrase controlled disclosure which she said sounded like a polite explosion. For the first time in years, Cassian believed the system might be stopped without a funeral. Then Seraphine's captain entered the ward. Captain Jalen Moore did not draw his sword. He saw the open service panel, the black ledger, and Seraphine's diminished light. His eyes moved to Cassian with recognition. Archbishop Halbrick requests the hero's presence, he said. Seraphine ordered him to leave. He bowed and obeyed. Cassian knew at once that the meeting was exposed. We move tonight, he said. Seraphine insisted her captain was loyal. To you? Cassian asked. Or to what he thinks you represent. He took Mira home through the mortuary passage. Seraphine remained to prepare her challenge. Before Cassian reached Low Bell, white-masked agents surrounded the clinic. Chapter 8. Black Gold Arithmetic. The raid did not begin with broken doors. It began with paperwork. At noon, health officers posted a suspension notice on the Letanner's clinic. At 2, bank clerks froze the Rook family's accounts. At 4, the district watch received an order to inventory unlawful medicines. By sunset, neighbors who helped the clinic could be charged with obstruction of public health. The Empire built violence one harmless form at a time. Cassian responded with arithmetic. He moved the uncounted records through 6 locations and created a release chain that no single arrest could stop. Yara prepared printing plates. Brother Caldus copied cathedral service maps. Brent inspected the old pipes connecting Low Bell to the Mercy foundations. Tomas used his watch authority to delay the medicine inventory by demanding every bottle be counted in alphabetical order. For 30 hours, Cassian believed they remained ahead. Then he discovered the black gold column. It appeared in the copied hospital receipt when held beside Mira's sun token. Ordinary ink showed 11 months collected from Warren. Beneath it, a metallic line named the destination, Bell Chamber Reserve, St. Orson Sublevel 9. The line could not be seen under normal flame. It emerged only in light reflected through Mira's token. Cassian tested other receipts. Every extraction carried a hidden destination and a transfer fee. The Mercy engine was not merely healing people. It maintained reservoirs of stored life beneath the cathedral. Mira's 6 missing years had not all been spent. 18 months remained in reserve. Can we take them back? She asked. Cassian did not answer until he understood the mechanism. The reserves resembled a bank with terrible liquidity. Years taken from millions were mixed, divided, and bound to active patients. A general's new liver might contain hours from 12,000 donors. Returning a specific person's time required stopping the central distribution core. A controlled shutdown was possible, but the design required the Archbishop's key and a unanimous Concord seal. An uncontrolled shutdown used the iron kill lever that would return bound reserves to living donors in proportion to what had been taken. It would also end every healing effect that depended on continuous power. Brother Caldus found the dependent count in a maintenance register, 73 in the Cathedral Ward, 900 across the capital hospitals, and more throughout the Empire. Most hospital patients could survive a gradual shutdown. The Cathedral 73 could not. Their treatment had replaced functions their bodies no longer possessed. Cassian wrote the names he could find. You are not considering it, Mira said. I am calculating consequences. That is how you consider things you do not want to admit are choices. She was seated at a Leanner's table, wrapped in a blanket. Every hour the Mercy halo burned. Another gray strand appeared in her hair. A controlled shutdown remains possible, Cassian said, with the people who build it agreeing. Seraphine will force inspection. If she is still free, he closed the ledger harder than necessary. Mira reached across the table. I do not want 73 people dead for me. This is larger than you. That makes it easier to say and worse to do. She was right. Cassian resented her for being right while he needed permission. He spent the night searching for an alternative. Divert the reserve to Low Bell. Isolate the Cathedral Ward. Slow the engine until Seraphine could act. Every path required access they did not possess or time the district would not be given. At dawn, Magistrate Boss sent a summons offering an emergency hearing. He claimed to have reviewed Cassian's evidence and requested all original materials. Yara called it a trap. Tomas called it the first lawful opening they had received. Leander said both could be true. Cassian chose the hearing because refusing would allow Voss to declare the evidence fraudulent without review. He took copies, never originals, and prepared witness statements. Sella would testify about Oren. Brother Caldus would explain the charter. Seraphine, if she could leave the hospital, would invoke Concord authority. Before departing, Cassian placed the service map beside the black ledger. The route to the kill lever ran beneath a water conduit built by Low Bell workers 90 years earlier. He memorized it, not because he had decided to use it, he told himself, because a careful man understood every option. The black gold lines on the receipt seemed to move when he looked away, joining into a shape like an open page. Cassian touched the ink. It was cold. Somewhere beneath the city, something noticed him noticing. Chapter 9. A Lawful Accusation. Cassian entered the Hall of Equal Measure through the eastern door with rain on his shoulders and 46 names inside his coat. Magistrate Voss had convened 7 judges, 3 health ministers, 2 Concord representatives, and an audience of accredited press. On paper, it was everything Cassian had demanded. In practice, every seat belonged to someone who had been warned. The carved lions watched from above. Voss opened with courtesy. He described Cassian as a diligent former colleague grieving hardships in his district. The phrase placed sympathy where credibility should have been. Cassian refused the invitation to sound wounded. He presented the Sun tokens, the extraction receipts, the account categories, and the charter language he had memorized. He demonstrated the link between public miracles and donor illness. He named Oren Pell. He named the 34 workers removed from the foundry ledger. He named Mira and the years taken from her. For 1 hour, the hall listened. Then the ministers divided the evidence. The tokens belonged to the health office. The receipts belonged to hospital finance. The charter fell under cathedral privilege. Heroic reserves were a military secret. No single court possessed jurisdiction over the whole chain. Each fragment, considered separately, proved only administrative irregularity. Cassian had predicted the argument. Then join the jurisdictions, he said. The harm is joined. A minister asked whether he possessed an original founding ledger. He said the tribunal did. The presiding judge ruled that a memory of sealed material could not compel its production. Call Seraphine Vale, Cassian said. The Concord representatives announced that Seraphine was on retreat preparing for the festival. Her office denied requesting the hospital meeting. That lie changed the room. Until then, Cassian could imagine officials misunderstanding. Now he knew they were coordinating. Voss gave him one final opportunity. Do you allege that the heroic Concord knowingly murders children to power miracles? Cassian understood the trap. If he said yes, they would make the case about heroes' intent rather than the machine's design. Seraphine had not known. Many signatories probably never saw the appendix. I allege that the Empire built a system in which knowledge is optional for those receiving benefit and consent is impossible for those paying the cost. Pens moved in the press gallery. That is rhetoric, Voss said. It is the mechanism. The eastern doors opened. Pell should have entered first. No one came. Cassian looked toward the witness passage. A bailiff whispered to Voss, who announced that all civilian witnesses had withdrawn. Brother Caldus had been detained for theft of cathedral records. Tomas Rook was under investigation for abuse of watch authority. Yarquil could not be located. Sella had signed her statement in Cassian's presence. She would not withdraw. He demanded a recess to find her. The judges refused. Without witnesses or original records, the petition was dismissed as unsubstantiated. The tribunal sealed every submitted copy for security review. Voss struck the decision bell. From somewhere beyond the hall came a muffled crash. Cassian turned toward the witness passage. 2 bailiffs blocked him. He saw a smear of rainwater, 1 broken shoe, and Oren's portrait lying face down beyond their shoulders. He moved before deciding to move. The first bailiff grabbed his coat. Cassian drove an elbow into the man's throat, tore free, and reached the passage. Sella lay unconscious beside the stair, bloodless but breathing. A white-masked agent pressed a cloth over her mouth. Cassian struck the agent with the iron evidence seal. Once. Twice. A third time after the agent fell, he stopped before the fourth. The hall had followed. Judges, press, and Concord officers watched Cassian kneeling over a masked official with a weapon in his hand. Voss did not need to manufacture the image. Cassian had given it to him. He was arrested for assault, theft of protected information, and conspiracy against public health. As guards bound his wrists, Cassian looked at Sella. She was awake now. Her fingers closed around Oren's portrait. Did they hear his name? She asked. Yes, then it was not nothing. The press reported that sentence as evidence of extremist commitment. Cassian spent 6 hours in a tribunal cell. Voss visited before midnight and dismissed the guards. I can end this, the magistrate said. Your family leaves the capital. Your sister enters a provincial hospital. You surrender the copies. The copies will release if I disappear. Then withdraw the claims publicly. Produce the ledger publicly. Voss closed his eyes. The festival is in 3 days. The city is full. If faith in the Mercy engine collapses, hospitals will riot. Provinces will withhold donors. Heroes will lose reserve during border attacks. You may be correct and still cause more death than the system. Then stop taking years. Gradually, when Voss did not answer, Tomas Rook arrived wearing a senior watch commander's coat he had not owned that morning. He presented a transfer order bearing 7 seals. The guards released Cassian into his custody before anyone discovered that 3 seals were forged and the coat belonged to a retired friend. Father and son left the tribunal by the eastern door. Behind them, the carved lion holding bread had begun to crack. Chapter 10. The hearing without witnesses. Tomas did not take Cassian home. They entered a disused watch station beneath the old aqueduct, where Yar and Bren waited with Sella, Brother Caldus, and 6 members of the uncounted. Sella's face was bruised. Caldus's fingers had been broken one at a time, but his stutter was gone. They asked for the service map, he said. Not the evidence. They know you found the route beneath the cathedral. Yar had escaped before agents reached her print shop. She brought worse news. Imperial crews were installing plague bearers around Low Bell. Officially, the bearers were precautionary. The oil wagons moving toward the eastern drains were designed for cleansing fire. They cannot burn a district during the festival, Tomas said. That is why they will call it a plague, Yar replied. Cassian spread the city maps. 3 days remained until the public renewal. Lobel might have won. He still sought a lawful move. The Emperor could suspend a cleansing order. So could 3 senior heroes. Seraphine remained unreachable. The other heroes had signed statements supporting the health ministry. Cassian proposed reaching the provincial governors through the press. Yara laughed once, without humor. The press just called Sella a deaf cultist. Some reporters recorded the evidence. Their plates were seized, then foreign embassies. The gates are closing. Every option became a door already locked. Tomas watched Cassian's face. You are thinking about the engine. The room fell silent. Cassian described the uncontrolled shutdown. He stated the likely return of stolen reserves, the collapse of the cathedral ward, and the risk to hospital patients. He did not soften the dependent count. 73 certain deaths, Sella said. Yes, to save Low Bell, to break the extraction network. The cleansing loses its stated purpose if the supposed plague can no longer threaten the Mercy system. More importantly, the district regains years already taken. Some sick children may recover, including Mira. Yara asked whether he would do it if Mira were not among the donors. Cassian said yes too quickly. No one challenged him. Their silence did more. Brother Caldus explained that the engine had emergency governors. With Seraphine's seal, they could isolate the dependent ward for perhaps an hour. Enough time to evacuate Low Bell, not enough to save the dependents after full collapse. Bren suggested taking the cathedral and forcing Halbrecht to issue a shutdown key. Tomas called that a siege against the most fortified building in the empire. Yara proposed destroying only the extraction valves. The valves were distributed across hundreds of schools and prisons. Closing some would increase demand on the rest. They argued until dawn. At the end, Cassian insisted on one final attempt to reach Seraphine and the Emperor. If that failed by midnight, they would enter the service tunnels. Their immediate objective would be proof and leverage, not destruction. The kill lever remained last resort. Mira entered from the back room. No one had told Cassian she was there. Last resort is a phrase people use before building a staircase to it, she said. He asked to speak with her alone. They climbed to the aqueduct roof. The capital spread beneath them, gold in the west and smoke black in the east. Between the two stood St. Orsen's Cathedral, its halo turning slowly against the clouds. Mira leaned on the parapet. If you break it, some of my years come back, likely, and people die. Yes, if you do nothing, Lobel burns. Yes, she looked at him. Do not tell me you are doing it for me. I am doing it for 11,000 people. You would burn 11,000 for me if the numbers were reversed. Cassian wanted to deny it. He could not insult her with a lie. Mira's eyes filled, but her voice stayed level. That is why you need rules. Not because you are cold. Because you love like a siege weapon. She gave him the brass sun token from around her neck. Use it to see the hidden lines, she said. Then give it back. I will. That was not permission. I know. Below them, the cracked bell moved in the wind. Its unfinished note rolled across low bell. Imperial crews began lowering the first gate. Chapter 11. An honest watchman. Tomas Rook had spent 30 years enforcing laws he did not write. On the last day of that career, he stole the Empire's original death ledger. The ledger was not the Mercy Charter. It was a transport register kept beneath the Northern Watch barracks, recording every person moved from district schools to cathedral examination halls. Unlike health accounts, watch registers use names because officers needed bodies to match warrants. Tomas knew the night clerk. He also knew the clerk had 3 grandchildren in Low Bell. They entered without force and found 2 Concord agents waiting. Cassian saw the trap before his father did. A candle burned on the wrong side of the desk. The clerk never wasted wax near a window. Cassian pulled Tomas down as a crossbow bolt struck the shelf behind them. The fight was short and ugly. Tomas disarmed one agent with a watchman's baton. Cassian trapped the other's wrist in a drawer and broke it. Neither Rook fought like a hero. They fought like men who understood furniture. The night clerk emerged from a cabinet. He had been bound but not harmed. Together they opened the register vault. The shelves contained 80 years of names. Cassian used Mira's token. Black gold transfer lines rose from the pages and passed through the floor toward the cathedral. When he touched one name, the token warmed and displayed a fraction. When he touched another, it showed a destination ward. The register transformed allegation into a map of theft. They could not carry all the books. Tomas selected the current year and the first year of the Mercy program. Cassian chose 3 district volumes with the greatest extraction. The night clerk agreed to hide the rest, knowing he might be imprisoned. As they left, bells sounded from the eastern bridges. Low Bell's gates had closed. Tomas led Cassian through watch tunnels until they reached the old bell tower. Residents filled the square below, demanding explanations from soldiers on the wall. Health officers announced a virulent sleeping plague. Anyone attempting to leave would be considered contagious. Lenanner stood on the clinic steps, treating a boy struck by a soldier shield. She should be inside, Cassian said. You have tried telling your mother where she should be, Tomas replied. They carried the ledgers to the clinic's hidden room. Yara began photographing pages onto printing plates. Each exposure revealed names and extraction fractions. Evidence could now spread faster than agents could seize it. For 2 hours, help returned. Then the first plate caught fire. Black gold ink flared without heat, consuming the copied names while leaving paper untouched. Every image taken from the register did the same. The Mercy engine protected its accounts through a binding written into the charter. Originals could be read. Copies became blank or burned. Cassian understood why the Empire had tolerated petitions. No documentary chain could survive outside approved archives. We broadcast the originals, Yar said. The Capitol's projection towers could display pages across buildings, but only the cathedral controlled enough power during the festival. They would need the service tunnels after all. Tomas closed the first register. Then I am coming. No, Cassian said. Lobel needs the watch organized when the gates open. That is an order, a request. You inherited your request from your mother. Tomas placed his old watch badge on the table. It was scratched, repaired twice, and shaped like the cracked bell. He had worn it through riots, fires, and 3 changes of district command. I believed a uniform could make a promise visible, he said. Most days it did. Some days it only made obedience easier. I should have known which day this was sooner. Cassian had spent years preparing to blame his father for faith in the system. The words would not come. Tomas pressed the badge into his son's right hand. Do not become them because they made decency ineffective. I don't intend to. No one intends the thing that becomes convenient later. Outside, white masked agents entered the square. Tomas went to organize the district watch. Cassian kept the badge beneath his glove. They did not know it was their last conversation as free men. Before midnight, Tomas would be arrested. By dawn, Leonor would be dead. And Cassian would finally learn that a promise can remain honest even after the law protecting it has failed. Interlude. What an honest man owed. Tomas Rook's forged transfer order succeeded because honesty had given him 3 decades of signatures to imitate. Every captain who sealed the paper had once trusted him with keys, prisoners, or pay chests. 2 were dead. 1 was drunk. 4 would have approved if asked, but asking would have placed them in danger. Tomas used their authority without consent because his son was in a cell and the law had become a trap. He kept a separate page listing the forgery. After freeing Cassian, Tomas visited each living captain through back alleys and told them what he had done. 1 struck him. 1 embraced him. 2 demanded their seals be removed from the copy, which was impossible without invalidating the release. Tomas offered to surrender after Lobel was safe. You could simply not tell them, Cassian said when he learned. Then I would be halberdied with smaller handwriting. Father and son had less time together than either knew. They walked the aqueduct toward the impounded station while rain moved over the capital. Tomas's stolen commander's coat pulled at his shoulders. Cassian asked whether he regretted joining the watch. Tomas considered the question as carefully as he considered bad hinges. He remembered finding missing children, stopping husbands from killing wives, carrying bodies after foundry blasts, and standing between soldiers and workers during strikes. A flawed institution had still given him tools to help. He'd also remembered orders obeyed too long. House a search because a form allowed it. Prisoners delivered to magistrates he distrusted. Sun token examiners protected from angry parents. Harm rarely announced itself as corruption. It arrived as a duty adjacent to useful duties. I regret every day I let the coat answer before I did, Tomas said. I do not regret the days it helped me answer. Cassian wanted a clearer verdict. Was the watch good or bad? It was people with lawful force. That is too dangerous to be either word for long. They reached a bridge overlooking Lobel. From there, imperial barriers looked like dark stitches closing a wound. Tomas admitted he had known about donor complaints for years. He had sent reports, protected Eleanor's records when possible, and convinced himself that gradual evidence would bring reform. You were right to investigate, he said. I was wrong to let patience become permission. Mother trusted the reports too. Your mother trusted people, not offices. She knew the difference better than I did. Cassian told him about the kill lever. Tomas stopped walking. The bells and dependent count were still theoretical then. 73 certain deaths, as far as Cassian knew. Tomas asked for every alternative and listened without interruption. When Cassian finished, he did not forbid the act or bless it. If you pull it, he said, you do not get to say they made you. They created the choice. Yes. And you will make it. That distinction protects them. No. It protects you from becoming a tool that believes it has no hand. Cassian's anger rose. Tomas had opened a grain store to prevent starvation. He had just forged seals and assaulted Concord agents. How could he demand purity now? I demand nothing pure, Tomas said. I demand ownership. The words followed Cassian into the engine chamber. At the disused station, Sella slept beneath a watch blanket. Brother Caldus held his broken fingers in a bowl of cold water. Yara argued with Bren about tunnel charges. These were ordinary people moving toward acts that public history would call rebellion. Tomas spoke with each one privately. He asked what they believed the plan was and what lines they would not cross. Answers differed. Sella would not harm patients. Bren would destroy machinery but not inhabited buildings. Yara would print private officials' names but not children's addresses. Caldus refused to damage the cathedral archive even if capture followed. Cassian realized his father was not collecting obedience. He was mapping restraint. Plans fail at the point no one discussed, Tomas said. Know who will refuse you before you need them. Cassian added each limit to the black ledger. Later, when the villain system offered contracts, he would recognize a corrupted version of that exercise. Exact bargains. Known prices. Consent under pressure. The system did not invent the logic of obligation. It weaponized it. Before leaving for Lobel, Tomas removed the forged commander's coat. He put his old blue-gray watch coat back on despite the arrest order attached to it. That makes you easier to recognize, Cassian said. Recognition is the point of a uniform. So is protection. Not tonight. Tomas walked toward the northern gate openly. Every officer saw a man they knew choosing the district over command. His arrest created hesitation no disguise could have produced. 3 officers refused the order. 7 carried it out gently. 1 whispered the prison route to Yara's runner. Honesty did not save Tomas from chains. It changed the people fastening them. In his tribunal cell, Tomas heard distant bells as Cassian reached the engine. He did not know whether his son would pull the lever. He wrote a statement on the back of the forged order. Cassian Rook was not ordered by me to destroy any mechanism. He acted after I taught him law could fail and before I taught him what to build in its place. Charge me with the first lesson as well as the forgery. Voss read the statement and tore it in half. Tomas picked up both pieces. Voss remained outside the cell longer than duty required. He and Tomas had once been friends of a cautious kind. Voss helped secure medicine after Mira's collapse. Tomas had protected the magistrate during a riot without asking which laws caused it. Each man believed the other decent enough to be persuaded eventually. Your son will destroy more than he understands, Voss said through the bars. So will your order. My order preserves the capital. Your order preserves the part that writes preservation reports. Voss unfolded one half of the statement. If I release you, can you stop him? Tomas could have lied. Freedom might let him reach Cassian before the lever. It might save lives. Instead, he answered the question asked. I can speak to him. I cannot command him. Voss left him locked. Hours later, when the Mercy engine failed, years of stolen strength returned through the prison walls. Tomas's shoulder healed enough to break the chair bolted beside his bunk. Other prisoners woke younger, older, or unchanged. Guards panicked as heroic wards went dark. Tomas could have escaped in the confusion. He opened neighboring cells first. Some held violent men. One had attacked a child. Tomas did not pretend in just detention race danger. He released only those he could identify and left the keys for prisoners to debate the rest. That imperfect choice delayed him. Imperial guards recaptured him before he reached the outer stair. When Cassian later asked why he had not run, Tomas said, because I was not the only name on the door. The answer became one of the rules of Lobel's first charter. No rescue plane could treat people outside its title as scenery. An honest record, he had learned, did not become less true because power preferred it broken. Chapter 12. The Saint in the Hospital. Seraphine Vale had been called a saint so often that people forgot sainthood was a claim made by witnesses, not a condition owned by the person inside it. She had grown up in a river province where fever took her brothers before the hero system awakened in her. At 16, she could close wounds with flight. At 17, the Concord brought her to the capital and taught her that every miracle drew from voluntary donations held by the Mercy engine. She donated first. She signed every consent form. She endured the silver needles, the weakness, and the missing months of her own life. When the engine restored those months without explanation, her tutors called it a reward for service. She believed them because the alternative meant every person she healed might have created a victim she never met. After Cassian left the Western Hospital, Seraphine opened the service panels herself. She followed the hidden pipes beneath the wards. Engineers tried to stop her. She used a hero's command to make them stand aside, then hated how quickly obedience came. The pipes descended to a substation where black gold gauges recorded donor categories. Seraphine could not read their script with ordinary sight. When she channeled healing light through them, names appeared: Oring Pell, Mira Rook, hundreds of thousands more. The hero system reacted inside her vision. It labeled the discovery an enemy corruption. It ordered her to purge the substation and preserve public hope. For the first time, Seraphine refused a direct heroic quest. The interface dimmed. Pain entered every old wound in her body. Captain Jalen Moore found her kneeling beside the gauges. He had served with her for 11 years. She trusted him with the location of hidden refugee camps and the names of heroes who woke screaming after battle. Seal the hospital, she told him. No records leave. No patients are moved. I need the founding charter and every appendix. Jalen looked at the donor names. His face went pale. This is a hostile projection, he said. It is connected to my power. That proves the attack reached the engine. It proves the engine reached them. He asked whether Cassian had influenced her. The question sounded concerned. Beneath it lay a conclusion already formed. A hero could not doubt the Concord unless a villain had poisoned her. Seraphine ordered him again. Jalen bowed. Then he went directly to Archbishop Halbert. Within an hour, the hospital entered ceremonial lockdown. Physicians told Seraphine that an assassination risk required her isolation until the festival. Her armor was taken for purification. Her attendants were replaced. The bronze feather she used to contact Cassian became evidence of mental compromise. No one called it imprisonment. Halbert visited at sunset. He listened while Seraphine described the donor network. He did not deny it. You knew, she said. I'd understood. Children, citizens under imperial guardianship. Do not translate them into policy while I am naming them. Halbert removed his gold ocular lens and cleaned it with a white cloth. Without the mechanism, the skin around his eye showed old burns. Before the engine, I buried 4,000 people in one plague season. I watched mothers offer years that could not be transferred and heroes spend themselves to death. The founder solved a problem no pure method could solve, by hiding the cost, by distributing it, without consent. Consent is a privilege of emergencies that move slowly. Seraphine asked whether he could shut the engine down safely. He said yes, over 15 years, while alternative reserves were built. She demanded he begin. He asked whether she would tell the capital that its healed children must surrender their health gradually so distant donor children might recover years no one could guarantee. Yes, then you will create war before the first valve closes. Perhaps truth creates a war you postpone onto the per. Halbert studied her with genuine sorrow. That sounds like Cassian Rook. It sounds like me. The Archbishop left her with a choice. Sign the renewal and join a supervised reform council, or refuse and be declared compromised by an emerging villain influence. If she signed, Mira would receive treatment. Lobel would be spared immediate cleansing, though extraction would continue. Seraphine asked for time. Halbert gave her until the festival. Outside the locked room, Jalen waited. Seraphine told him to deliver a warning to Cassian. The Concord knew about the service tunnels, and Lobel would be sealed before dawn. Jalen promised. He delivered the warning to Magistrate Voss instead. In another part of the capital, Voss issued Plague Order 7. White masks were distributed to agents who had already memorized the clinic's floor plan. Chapter 13. The price of telling her. The uncounted learned Seraphine had been confined through the absence of miracles. For 15 years, golden light had crossed the capital every few hours. A bridge repair, a hospital emergency, a veteran's pain eased in a courtyard. After the Western Hospital meeting, the light stopped. Official broadcast said Seraphine had entered sacred meditation. Cassian heard captivity in the phrase. He also saw the price of his trust. By approaching the hero, he had shown the Concord which evidence mattered, which hospital held Mira, and which people were willing to act. Every protective measure he had built assumed the institution would conceal guilt. He had not prepared for it to move openly because a beloved hero had looked behind the curtain. Agents arrested Tomas near the northern gate. They did so publicly, in front of officers who had served under him. The charge was forgery of a transfer order. Tomas could have resisted. Instead, he removed his watch coat, folded it, and gave it to the youngest officer. A uniform does not obey for you, he told them. 3 officers lowered their weapons. 9 did not. The hesitation was enough for residents to carry the transport ledgers away through market tunnels. Tomas was taken toward the tribunal prison. Cassian received the news while moving medicine into the old foundry. His first instinct was to trade the evidence for his father. The thought arrived whole and immediate. He despised Halbrecht for making it predictable. Mira saw the decision on his face. Father would hate that bargain. He would be alive to hate it, and everyone in the ledgers. Do not make this easy by being right. I am not trying to make it easy. Cassian sent a counteroffer, public production of the charter in exchange for suspension of the projection plates. Voss replied that terrorists could not set terms. The word terrorist reached low bell before the reply did. Imperial criers described the uncounted as a death cult seeking to destroy hospitals. They showed the face of Salapel beside invented confessions. They showed Cassian striking the masked agent in the witness passage, stopping the image before viewers could see Sella on the floor. Neighbors who had trusted Eleanor for 20 years began asking whether Cassian truly intended to shut down the Mercy engine. He answered honestly, if there is no other way to stop the extraction, yes. Some people left the room. One man spat at him. A woman whose husband lived because of a Mercy lung called Cassian a murderer. Her husband was not wealthy. The engine's benefits crossed class lines often enough to make simple rebellion impossible. Cassian did not blame her. That refusal to blame cost him more than anger would have. Yara argued that honesty was a luxury during siege. Cassian disagreed. If Lobel accepted protection without knowing the price, he would be rebuilding the Mercy engine in miniature. You still think consent saves your soul? Yara said. No. I think it preserves theirs. By evening, half the district believed the plague order and half believed Cassian. Families fought over whether to present children for quarantine. Watch officers loyal to Tomas opened safe routes, while ministry officers closed them. Mira climbed the clinic steps and showed the crowd her white hair. She described the examination, the missing years, and the black gold lines. She did not ask them to support Cassian. She asked them to demand the ledger. For 10 minutes, the square listened. Then white smoke entered from the western street. Masked agents moved within it. Cassian saw their formation and understood the target was not arrest. 4 teams bypassed the crowd and advanced directly on the clinic doors. They carried sealed lamps used to destroy contaminated buildings after evidence removal. Get Mira out, he told Bren. Mira refused. Cassian lifted her over his shoulder and handed her to the larger man while she expressed her objections with excellent precision. Eleanor remained inside with 7 patients too sick to move quickly. Cassian ran toward the clinic. The first masked agent struck him with a hook staff. The blow opened his right eyebrow to the bone. Blood entered his eye. A second agent caught his left hand in the clinic gate and crushed 2 fingers before Yara brought a brick down on the hinge. Cassian pulled free, leaving skin beneath the iron. The scar and glove came from that moment. Later, portraits would make them look like calculated marks of menace. In truth, they were what remained of a sun arriving too late. Chapter 14. Night of White Masks. Rain began as the white masks entered Eleanor's clinic. It struck the roof hard enough to cover the sound of glass breaking. Agents overturned medicine shelves and marked walls with purification oil. Patients fled through the rear stair, guided by 2 apprentice nurses who knew a roof route into the neighboring laundry. Eleanor did not flee. One patient was a foundry worker with a metal fragment near his heart. Another was a pregnant woman whose labor had begun under the smoke. 3 were children with extraction fever. Moving them carelessly could kill them before the agents decided whether to finish the work. Leander barred the treatment room and continued operating. Cassian entered through the front window. His left hand would not close. Blood blinded his right eye. He used a curtain cord to bind the hand and the sleeve of his tribunal coat to wipe the blood. 2 agents waited in the dispensary. He recognized one from the hearing. He also recognized the moment in himself when recognition became permission. He struck first. The fight broke shelves, tables, and every remaining promise Cassian had made Mira about threatening clerks. He used legal weights, broken chair legs, and the narrow doorway. He did not kill either agent. He came close enough to discover that restraint felt less like virtue than unfinished motion. Yara entered behind him with district watch officers. Together they cleared the front rooms. The treatment door opened. Leander stood there in a blood-stained apron, though most of the blood belonged to the foundry worker. "If you damage my last clean table," she told Cassian, "you will repair it." Relief nearly folded him. Then a purification lamp rolled across the floor. Its seal had already broken. The lamp released white fire without heat. It consumed medicines, records, and magical residue while leaving wood untouched. Anything carrying mercy energy became ash. The 3 fevered children began to convulse as light pulled from them toward the flame. Leander crossed the room and covered the lamp with her own body. She had absorbed trace mercy energy through decades of treating extraction victims. The fire found it. Cassian reached her as the light vanished. There was no dramatic wound. Leander simply became tired. She sat against the wall while patients escaped around her. Cassian tried every technique she had taught him. Her pulse continued weakening. "Do not waste medicine," she said. "Be quiet. You always become rude when frightened." He called for a mercy healer and heard the contradiction only after the words left him. The Cathedral network could restore her by taking more time from children like those she had just protected. Leander understood. "No," she said. Cassian pressed both hands around hers, one gloved in blood and curtain cloth. "You do not get to make this easy for me. Nothing about you has ever been easy." Outside, residents drove the remaining agents back. Rain hissed against lanterns. The old bell groaned above the roofs. Leander asked whether the patients were safe. Cassian said yes. She asked about Mira. He said she was with Bryn in the foundry shelter. "And Tomas?" Cassian could not answer. Her eyes closed briefly. "Names first," she whispered. He leaned closer. "Whatever you break," Leander said, "name who it hurts. That is how you know when justice has become appetite." Cassian promised. "Do not promise me." "Write it down." They carried her to the back room after the raid. Survivors gathered under blankets while the rain softened. Mira returned and lay beside her mother. For 1 hour, the Rook family existed within a circle of quiet that the Empire had not yet found a form to classify. Leander died before dawn. Cassian wrote her name into the black ledger. Leander Rook. Healer. Mother. Protected 7 patients during unlawful purification. Died because her son trusted a hero before securing his home. Mira read the last line and struck him across the face. "Do not use honesty to punish yourself where everyone can see it," she said. "That is still making this about you." Cassian closed the book. The clinic clock stopped at 4:17. At 4:18, a runner brought Plague Order 7. The order authorized complete cleansing of Low Bell at sunrise. Chapter 15. The last patient. Leander's last patient was the district itself. That was how Mira described Low Bell when Cassian tried to move her body before the cleansing. The clinic had always treated more than wounds. It stored testimony, settled arguments, hid runaways, and reminded exhausted people that their pain had witnesses. With Leander gone, the building remained a structure. The patient remained alive. They laid her beneath the old bell tower, wrapped in the brown coat she wore on winter calls. There was no time for burial. 11,000 residents had less than 2 hours before the oil pumps opened. Cassian stood on the clinic steps and read Plague Order 7 aloud. The order cited a contagious mercy corruption associated with extremist interference. It required sealed gates, removal of essential officials, and purification by sanctified fire. The final clause transferred all surviving children to imperial guardianship. They planned to burn the adults and keep the donors. Any remaining hesitation inside Cassian changed shape. He gave the district the facts. He described the Mercy engine, the dependent ward, the likely effects of destroying it, and the absence of the safe shutdown key. He said 73 people would certainly die. He said additional hospital patients might die. He said returned years could save Lobel but could not undo every extraction. If you follow me into the tunnels, he concluded, you do not follow a hero. I cannot promise clean hands or rescue without cost. I can promise only that I will not hide the cost from the people paying it. The square answered with argument. Some demanded the engine's destruction. Some called him a murderer. Some wanted to surrender children in exchange for adult evacuation. Cassian let them speak while the clock moved. Consent given without time was compromise. Silence forced by urgency was worse. Celapel climbed the steps. Her son had died from the engine. Her older son had died in the foundry. She had more reason for vengeance than anyone present. The 73 have names, she said. If we choose this, we carry them too. She was the first to volunteer for the tunnels. The woman whose husband lived on a Mercy Lung did not. She called Cassian unforgivable and left to seek shelter near the western gate. Cassian assigned 2 watch officers to protect her route. Yara asked why he would spare resources for someone who rejected them. Because protection is not a vote I purchase, he said. Mira watched closely, as if measuring how long that answer would remain true. The plan divided Lobel into 3 efforts. Tomas's loyal watch officers would sabotage the oil pumps. Bren and the foundry crews would hold fire breaks. Yara would seize the projection relay beneath the cathedral. Cassian, Sella, and Brother Calvis would reach the engine and force Halbert to produce the controlled shutdown key. The kill lever remained the final action if the cleansing began. They had 56 minutes. Cassian replaced the cloth around his left hand with a black leatherwork glove from Bren. 2 fingers were broken, but the glove allowed him to grip. Mira cleaned the cut through his eyebrow and stitched it while he continued issuing instructions. You will tear this open, she said, then make the stitches efficient. That sentence is why villains get ugly scars. It was the first joke either had made since Leander died. Neither laughed. Cassian returned Mira's sun token. She pushed it back. You need it to see the lines. You told me to give it back. I changed my mind. Because you approve. Because I want you to see exactly what you are doing. She closed his gloved fingers around the token. As Cassian crossed the square, residents made space. Some reached for him. Others turned away. A boy asked whether he was going to save them. Cassian looked toward the cathedral halo. I am going to stop them, he said. It was not the same promise. The tunnel entrance lay beneath the foundry furnace. Bren opened it with a windlass turned by his grandfather. Steam rolled up from darkness. The service route descended beneath the walls, following pipes that carried Lobel's labor west and the Empire's waste east. Cassian paused at the threshold. Behind him, the cracked bell sounded once. Ahead, black gold lines appeared along the tunnel bricks, visible through Mira's token. They formed arrows leading toward St. Orison's Cathedral. The Mercy engine knew he was coming. So did something else. Chapter 16. Plague Order 7. The service tunnels had been built by people the cathedral never named. Lobel masons laid the brick. Lobel smiths fitted the valves. Children carried water to workers who died before St. Orson's first golden window was installed. Their marks remained beneath the imperial plaster, family signs, shift counts, small insults carved where foremen would not see. Bren read the walls like a map. He led Cassian's group below the sealed district, past drainage gates and pressure rooms. Above them, oil wagons connected to the cleansing mains. Every few minutes, the pipes shuddered as imperial crews tested flow. Brother Caldas carried a cathedral key ring. Sella carried Oren's portrait inside her coat. Yara's relay team followed until the first junction, then turned toward the projection tower. Cassian heard Leander in every instruction he gave. Check the patient. Name the harm. Do not mistake speed for certainty. He had spent his childhood applying those rules to bodies. Now the patient was a city, and the treatment might kill people in another ward. At the aqueduct valve, they found 3 watch officers guarding the route. Tomas had expected friendly uniforms. These wore white plague cords. Cassian stepped forward with Plague Order 7 in hand. Clause 18 reserves service access for tribunal inspection. The senior officer looked at the paper, then at Cassian's face on a wanted notice. You are no longer tribunal. The clause does not require current employment. For 3 seconds, absurd procedure held a sword in its sheath. Then the officer attacked. Bren brought down a steam valve. Scalding mist filled the junction, blinding everyone without burning them. Cassian moved through the fog by memory. He struck wrists, knees, and the soft gap below armor. Cella locked one officer behind a gate. Brother Caldas used a cathedral censer as a club and apologized after every blow. They won without killing. The villain system had not yet awakened, but Cassian would later remember how disappointed he felt by that restraint. The officers had chosen a cleansing order. Part of him wanted a simpler world in which that choice erased every claim they had to mercy. He wrote their names into the black ledger anyway. At the next junction, a speaking tube carried Voss's voice from the surface. The magistrate had taken command of the district operation. Cassian, he said, your father is alive. Turn back and I will keep him so. Cassian stopped beneath a red lamp. The tube continued. The hospital has stabilized Seraphine. Mira's extraction can be reversed. There is no need for this. Open the gates, Cassian said. The health ministry will not. You signed the order to control its execution. That is what every useful man tells himself while holding the pen. Voss's breath moved through the tube. If you reach the engine, Halbrecht will trigger the cleansing early. You cannot save the district and the dependents. Then help me obtain the key. I cannot, will not. There are responsibilities you do not understand. Cassian looked at the names on the wall, carved by dead laborers. There are responsibilities you have spent your life arranging not to see. He broke the speaking tube. The path divided near sublevel 6. One route climbed toward the public cathedral. The other descended to the engine. Black gold lines covered the lower arch like roots. Mira's token grew hot enough to burn through the glove. Words appeared in the air. Candidate observed. Grievance valid. Methods insufficient. Cassian assumed exhaustion had produced the vision. When he touched the words, they vanished. Brother Caldas saw nothing. Cella saw his reaction. What was it? She asked. A warning. From whom? Cassian looked down the tunnel. Something that thinks it knows where this ends. Behind them, cleansing pumps began to turn. The sound traveled through the pipes like a giant drawing breath. Chapter 17. No court left. There is a moment in every failed system when its victims stop asking whether the highest court will help and begin asking whether any court remains. Cassian reached that moment on sublevel 7. The tunnel opened into an archive larger than the Hall of Equal Measure. Shelves descended into darkness. Every mercy extraction generated a physical page because the founding magic required written debt. The Empire could alter public copies, divide jurisdictions, and burn projections, but the engine itself demanded exact accounts. Here were the names it denied elsewhere, millions of them. Cassian walked between shelves while the cleansing pumps accelerated. Mira's token illuminated transfer lines. He found Low Bell by district mark and opened the current register. Every resident had a projected value. Children were sorted by remaining years. Adults were sorted by labor utility. Leanner's entry had already been closed. Beside Cassian's own name, the ledger recorded no extractable reserve. Instead, it contained a black blank. Brother Caldas said the blank appeared in old cathedral legends. It marked people incompatible with mercy grace, oathbreakers, desecrators, and candidates for something the Concord text called adversarial selection. Villains, Cella said. Caldas nodded. The hero system was publicly known. Champions awakened during acts of courage and received quests, levels, and blessings. Stories claimed villains arose as natural corruption in opposition to them. The archive suggested otherwise. Both categories were recorded before awakening. Both served the same engine. Cassian's blank had been created after the hearing. The engine was not merely predicting his fall. It was preparing a roll. He tore out the page. Black fire restored it at once. "Leave it," Celis said. "We came for the shutdown." Cassian found the cleansing orders reserve transfer. At sunrise, every remaining year stored under Low Bell would move into the heroic Concord. The fire was not only concealment. It was harvest. Burning the district would release life all at once, allowing the heroes to enter the coming border war with unprecedented power. The court had never been deciding whether Low Bell deserved protection. It was preparing an acquisition. Cassian placed the open register beneath a projection lens. Yara's voice came through a service wire. Her team had seized the relay, but Cathedral wards blocked transmission. If Cassian reached the engine core, he could feed the true ledger into the festival display. "Do that first," Yara said. "Let the city see." Maybe the soldiers stopped the pumps. It was the last lawful appeal available, not to judges, but to the people whose obedience made orders real. They carried the register upward to the core access chamber. Concord Knights waited at the stair. Their captain offered safe passage for civilians if Cassian surrendered the ledger. Celis stepped beside Cassian and held up Oren's portrait. "Say his name," she told the captain. The captain knew it. Cassian saw recognition. He also saw the man choose not to speak. The knights advanced. Brother Caldus unlocked the maintenance gate and released a flood of harmless condenser water. The current knocked armor from its feet and carried the group through a spillway into sublevel 8. They lost the transport register in the torrent. Sella dived after it. Cassian caught her coat. For one moment, she fought him with the strength of a mother watching her son's name disappear again. The book struck a grate and vanished into the lower machinery. "I am sorry," Cassian said. Sella looked at his hand holding her back. "Will you remember it? Every page." "That is not what I asked." He understood. "I will remember what losing it cost you." She stopped fighting. They emerged near the cathedral dependent ward. The cleansing pumps entered final charge. 12 minutes remained. Cassian had no original ledger to display, no hero seal, no archbishop's key, and no court left to petition. Only the 73 bells waited ahead. Chapter 18. The Mercy Engine's Dependents. Cassian expected the dependent ward to feel like a tomb. It felt like a hospital. Families sat beside beds. Nurses checked instruments. Flowers filled brass vases. A woman read to her sleeping wife. An old soldier played cards with his grandson while a golden hourglass breathed for lungs that no longer could. These were not faceless beneficiaries. They were patients caught inside a crime designed to make their survival depend on its continuation. The ward physician recognized Cassian from the broadcast and reached for an alarm. He raised empty hands. "I need the dependency register," he said. "You need to leave. The engine may stop within minutes. I need to know who can survive transfer." The physician's anger became fear. She looked toward the bells. "It cannot stop." "It can." She gave him the register. Cassian and Brother Caldus moved bed to bed. 21 patients had partial biological function and might survive if disconnected carefully. 19 could be supported temporarily with mechanical devices. 11 had family members willing to donate direct vitality, though the process would endanger donors. The remaining 22 appeared completely dependent. The number 73 was certain only if no one tried. Cassian ordered every possible transfer. Nurses resisted until the cleansing siren sounded through the walls. Sella told families the truth. Low Bell was about to burn. The engine powered the harvest, and Cassian might destroy it. Some screamed. Some attacked him. One man begged. Cassian accepted every reaction. Lady Selin, the school founder, was awake. She had heard enough to understand. "How many children?" she asked. "Registered extraction across the empire exceeds 2 million. How many in your district?" 3,106 living donors. "And if you wait, the district burns." Lady Selin looked at the golden thread entering her chest. "Disconnect me." Her daughter refused. The two argued with a lifetime of love compressed into minutes. Cassian moved on because consent belonged to the patient, but the physician required time to prepare. At bed 50, A 6-year-old boy named Pell slept while his mother told him a story. He was not related to Oren. The shared name felt like accusation anyway. Pell had been born without a functioning heart chamber. The engine supplied its rhythm. No transfer could save him. His mother recognized Cassian. You said children were being stolen from. They are. Then why is mine the one you kill? No answer could meet that question without becoming defense. Because I may choose to break the machine holding him alive, Cassian said. She struck him. The cut at his eyebrow opened again. Say his name, she demanded. Pell Arden. All of it. Pell Edrin Arden. He likes blue kites. He hates pear soup. He thinks Seraphine can hear prayers through walls. Cassian wrote each fact beneath the boy's name. By the time the ward transfers began, the certain death count had fallen from 73 to 40. It was still 40. Archbishop Halbert's voice filled the chamber through hidden speakers. He ordered the ward sealed and called Cassian's evacuation an act of terror. Concord Knights advanced from both entrances. Seraphine answered from somewhere above. Stand down. Her voice carried heroic command. Half the knights froze. The other half wore ear seals and continued. Seraphine had escaped confinement. Hope moved through Cassian before he could stop it. Then Halbert triggered the first cleansing line early. Through the service gauges, black gold light surged from Low Bell toward the engine. On the district map, 3 streets turned white. 8 minutes remained until full ignition. The physician disconnected Lady Selin. Her daughter held her as the light left. Lady Selin died without miracle or bell. The certain count became 39. Cassian wrote her name. He had entered expecting a number. He left carrying a ward. Chapter 19. The choice no hero makes. Seraphine reached sublevel 8 with broken light around her armor and Captain Jalen's sword in her hand. Jalen followed under guard. He had released her after seeing the cleansing transfer begin. Loyalty to the Concord had survived hidden theft. It did not survive the sight of a district converted into heroic reserve. I can stop the fire, Seraphine said. The command circuit accepts a Concord seal. Brother Caldas shook his head. Halbrecht split the circuit. One hero can delay. The Archbishop's key is still required to cancel. Then we take the key. 6 minutes remained. Seraphine offered a third path. She would channel herself into the dependent ward while Cassian interrupted the extraction valves. Her power might hold the 39 patients long enough to force public inspection. How long? Cassian asked. An hour. Perhaps 2. Low bell burns in 6 minutes. I can divide the channel. Can you stop the oil? No. Then it is not a third path. Seraphine's grief became anger. You came here already willing to kill them. I came willing to stop the engine. Do not hide inside grammar. The accusation landed because it sounded like Mira. Cassian asked Yara for a district report. The projection relay carried screams and pump noise. Brent's crews had disabled 2 oil lines. 5 remained. Watch officers held the western gate, but Imperial fire teams were entering from the north. Mira was moving children through sewer shelters. Tomas remained in prison. 4 minutes. Sella proposed overloading the projection relay to expose the hidden transfer. The display would reach the cathedral crowd for perhaps 30 seconds. Seraphine believed public panic might force Halbrecht to pause. Cassian calculated. 30 seconds to reveal. At least a minute for the crowd to understand. More for soldiers to receive orders. Low Bell did not possess those minutes. We do both, he said. Project the ledger and reach the core. Seraphine caught his arm. And if Halbrecht refuses? Cassian looked through the glass at Pell Arden. I pull the lever. The boy's mother heard. Her expression held no surprise now, only a hatred so complete it seemed calm. Cassian knew that if he succeeded, she would become a witness against every excuse he might later invent. Good, he thought. The thought frightened him. The hero system appeared before Seraphine in a burst of gold. Cassian could not see its words, but he saw her face. It offered her a quest. Defeat the emerging villain. Preserve the engine. Save the dependent ward. The objectives were all defensible and arranged to protect the crime beneath them. Seraphine dismissed it. Pain drove her to one knee. Cassian helped her stand. You could stop me. Would that save Low Bell? No. Then the system is lying through a true sentence. They moved toward the court together. At the last door, Seraphine remained behind to hold the knights. She gave Cassian her bronze seal. It would open the emergency governor for 90 seconds. 90 seconds is not enough, he said. It is what I have. If I break it, your power may fail. If you break it, people I love will die. I know. Do you? Cassian opened the black ledger to the dependent names. Seraphine read them. Lady Sullen had already been crossed by death. Pel Edrin Arding remained. When this is over, Seraphine said, I will bring you to trial. If there is a court left, I will attend. The door opened. Archbishop Halbrecht waited beside the Mercy engine with a gold key in one hand and a pardon in the other. 2 minutes remained before Low Bell burned. Interlude. The ward before the choice. The last 8 minutes inside the dependent ward lasted longer than the years stored above it. Nurses moved patients from golden support to ordinary machines. Families made decisions physicians normally requested over weeks. Some offered their own vitality through direct lines. Others refused, not from lack of love, but because the process might leave children without 2 parents instead of 1. Cassian watched each choice while wanting time to become a calculation again. At bed 6, Mara Tesh's sister demanded direct transfer. The physician warned that Mara might live only hours and the sister could lose a decade. She insisted. The device accepted consent, drew light, and failed to restore autonomous function. The sister lost 9 years in less than a minute. Gray entered her hair. Mara remained dependent. The system had not awakened, but black ledger marks flickered around the failed bargain. The Mercy architecture understood debt before it understood life. At bed 9, Commander Arvin refused his son's offer. Arvin had defended Low Bell's northern gate during riots 20 years earlier, then commanded troops who suppressed a frontier province. His account held rescue and violence without settling into a single title. Save your years, he told his son. I spent mine twice. The son tried to force the transfer. Nurses restrained him. At bed 13, Lady Seln ordered disconnection and asked Salapel to witness. Sella disliked the noblewoman for funding schools that expelled Suntoken children after illness. Lady Seln admitted the policy had protected school rankings. Write that too, she said. Sella did. The ward physician, Dr. Neem Avar, had served there for 16 years. She knew the engine used donations but believed them voluntary. Her own husband received a Mercy kidney after a mining accident. When Cassian showed her the black gold source line, she found the donor, a prisoner named Hask Bell, sentenced for stealing medicine. Hask lost 4 years. He had died in custody. Dr. Avar sat for 3 seconds. Then she returned to work. Knowledge did not always produce collapse. Sometimes it had to wait beside duty until there was room to hurt. Seraphine moved among the beds after escaping confinement. Without full heroic reserve, her healing could ease pain but not replace organs. She divided her remaining light into tiny comforts. A clear breath. A quiet heartbeat. Sleep without fear. The hero system punished inefficient distribution. It urged concentration on symbolically valuable patients. Saving Pell would inspire the public. Saving Commander Arvin would preserve military strength. Saving Lady Selm would protect education funds. Seraphine ignored the rankings and gave equal comfort. Her power weakened faster. Cassian noticed. You will have nothing left for the Corps. That is what this is for. You may need to fight Halbrecht. Then I fight without it. He wanted to call the decision strategically foolish. Eleanor would have approved it. That tension revealed another difference between them. Seraphine's instinct moved toward the person presently suffering. Cassian's moved toward the future arrangement of suffering. Each tendency could save lives. Each could become an excuse. At bed 50, Pell asked why everyone was afraid. His mother, Emile, did not tell him adults were handling it. She explained that the machine giving his heart a rhythm had hurt other children and might stop. She said people were trying to find another way. She said the man in the dark coat might decide there was no time. Pell looked at Cassian. Does he get to decide? Emile answered carefully. He can reach the lever. That is not the same. No, Cassian heard and wrote the sentence. Near the final beds, Brother Caldus discovered an emergency flywheel. It could preserve 3 dependents for 6 hours. Choosing them would take seconds. Dr. Avar proposed the 3 youngest. Commander Arvin's son proposed patients most likely to recover. Lady Seln proposed drawing lots. The argument became a smaller mercy engine, decide whose claim outweighed another, under time pressure, with no neutral answer. Cassian refused to choose. Then no one gets it, Arvin's son said. The patients choose whether to enter a lot. Cassian replied. 21 conscious patients consented. Families represented 7 unconscious patients under existing directives. 11 lacked clear representatives. Dr. Avar excluded those 11 rather than invent consent. They drew 3 names. Pell was not chosen. Emil closed her eyes and thanked the nurse who held the bowl. That gratitude was more difficult than rage. The selected patients moved to the flywheel. Its 6 hours might allow ordinary surgery. It might only postpone death. The certain count fell by 3. This was how 73 became 39, not through one clever plan, but through dozens of incomplete acts performed by people who refused to treat certainty as destiny. Cassian's later reputation would compress the ward into a number he knowingly killed. The number was true. It omitted every person who fought to make it smaller. Before Cassian left for the Corps, Dr. Avar gave him the dependency register. If you stop it, she said, do not say we could save no one. I won't. And do not say saving some made the rest acceptable. I won't. You keep making promises. Cassian looked at the black ledger. Then keep the register. She did. It became the first independent record of the deaths after the engine fell, and later the document that disproved Cassian's initial count. 47 hospital deaths beyond the ward became 87. 87 became 109. Some were caused directly by lost support. Others came from panic, failed transport, or physicians who misunderstood the shutdown. The boundary of responsibility expanded with every investigation. So did the pain in Emil's contract. In the ward's final minute, Pell asked Seraphine whether heroes heard prayers through walls. People hear them, she said. Sometimes that has to be enough. He asked her to tell Cassian not to forget the blue kite. She promised. Then she went to hold the corridor while Cassian made the choice no system should have been allowed to arrange. Behind her, Dr. Avar continued preparing the ward for failure. She turned off decorative systems, filled manual oxygen bellows, and assigned a living person to every bed. The Mercy engine had trained hospitals to depend on invisible continuity. Ordinary care required hands, schedules, and someone willing to become tired. At bed 31, 2 estranged brothers met for the first time in 9 years. Their mother had remained alive through engine support while they argued over whether continued treatment was mercy or fear. With minutes left, neither argument mattered enough to finish. They held one hand each. At bed 44, a retired judge dictated a confession. He had approved the legal category allowing prisoners' years to be taken. He claimed he never understood the engineering. His clerk reminded him that 3 petitions had described it. He amended the confession. At bed 60, a woman woke after 12 years unconscious. The weakening engine released her mind before her body failed. She spoke her daughter's name. The daughter was now older than the mother remembered. Their reunion lasted 4 minutes and could be called gift or cruelty without either word becoming complete. These scenes never appeared in the first public accounts. Supporters of Cassian emphasized the donors restored. His enemies showed covered beds. Both selected clean images for arguments that were not clean. Emil preserved the ward record because she refused both simplifications. She recorded transfers that worked, choices that failed, and the moment each bell moved. Her testimony later became the most damaging evidence against Cassian and the strongest evidence against rebuilding the engine. When people asked how she could serve both purposes, Emil answered that a true record was not required to choose a side before being true. That principle would become the greatest threat to both systems. Chapter 20. The Cathedral of Gold. The Mercy engine occupied the space beneath every public prayer. Its core hung inside a chamber taller than the cathedral nave. 30 rotating rings surrounded a sphere of condensed life. Pipes entered from the walls like roots feeding a false sun. Each pulse illuminated scenes engraved on the floor, heroes healing plague, emperors ending famine, children smiling beneath golden hands. No engraving showed where the light began. Cassian entered from the service door with Seraphine's seal. The emergency governor opened behind him, starting a 90-second delay. The cleansing pump slowed but did not stop. Halbrecht stood across a long black table. He had arranged the gold key, a sealed pardon, and a fresh tribunal code in Cassian's size. You anticipated my measurements, Cassian said. I have anticipated you for years. The archbishop's ocular lens rotated. Black gold data moved through it. He could see the same adversarial marks Cassian had glimpsed in the archive. Why is my name blank? Cassian asked, because the engine cannot take from what it may need to oppose. Halbrecht explained that the hero system generated stability by selecting champions. But concentrated hope created resistance. People feared the power they surrendered to heroes. They questioned sacrifices. They required an enemy against whom unity felt voluntary. The villain system selected that enemy. Most candidates were criminals, warlords, or wounded idealists. The system rewarded public transgression, amplified useful conflict, and eventually offered a grand threat the heroes could defeat. Each cycle renewed faith and released enormous reserve energy. You manufacture villains, Cassian said. We identify people already willing to become them, by cornering them, by revealing their true priorities. The engine brightened. Images appeared in the air. Tomas alive in a tribunal cell. Mira guiding children through low bell sewers. Seraphine fighting knights outside the core. Hell sleeping in the dependent ward. Halbrecht touched the gold key. You can still refuse selection. The offer was precise. Cassian would surrender the ledgers and publicly confess to foreign manipulation. Seraphine would sign the renewal after being told Lobel had forged the evidence. The district's children would enter provincial care. 2,000 adults chosen by Cassian would evacuate. The rest would die in the cleansing. Mira, Tomas, and the uncounted leadership would live. Cassian would become magistrate of donor reform, empowered to reduce extraction over 20 years. You are offering me a cleaner version of your job, Cassian said. I am offering you the power to save people who exist instead of mourning an ideal population that never will. 11,000 exist. So do the millions protected by stability. The emergency governor counted down in silent gold marks. Halbrecht had designed the bargain to fit Cassian's weaknesses. It offered control, recognition, family, and measurable improvement. More people might live under gradual reform than through violent collapse. Cassian could spend a lifetime reducing harm from inside. Magistrate Voss would call that wisdom. Leaner would ask who paid during the 20 years. Cassian placed the black ledger on the table. Show me the reform projections. Halbrecht relaxed slightly and opened a drawer. Inside were schedules for extraction reduction. The first 5 years decreased Lobel's rate and increased it in frontier prisons. Later reductions depended on expanding charitable examinations into conquered provinces. The reform did not end theft. It moved the people whose names Cassian recognized out of the first column. He closed the schedules. You could have offered no one better, Halbrecht said. That matters. It does. Then choose. The 90 seconds expired. Oil surged toward Lobel. Cassian reached not for the pardon, but for the archbishop's wrist. Halbrecht moved with unexpected speed. His robes concealed a blade of solid mercy light. Cassian's glove caught the flat. Stolen years burned cold through the leather. They fought across the table while the key spun away. Halbrecht was older, stronger, and powered by millions. Cassian was injured, exhausted, and carried the watch badge of an honest man beneath his glove. He drove the badge into the mechanism of Halbrecht's ocular lens. The gold eye shattered. For 1 second, the archbishop could no longer see the future role prepared for Cassian. Cassian took the key. Chapter 21. The Keeper's Offer. The gold key did not stop the cleansing. It opened a command interface above the black table. 7 branches appeared, each requiring a concord seal. Halbrecht had told the truth in the most useful way. His key was necessary, not sufficient. Cassian possessed Seraphine's seal. 6 remained. You cannot govern a system you only know how to accuse, Halbert said. Blood ran from the ruined lens across his cheek. Every safeguard exists because someone before you attempted the righteous shortcut. Cassian placed Seraphine's seal into the first branch. The display offered a choice between district cleansing and emergency reserve hardest. Both killed low bell under different terminology. Who designed the options? People who survived what idealists broke. Halbrecht reached for the key. Cassian twisted his injured hand and locked the mechanism. The glove filled with blood. Outside, Seraphine's light struck the corridor. She was losing ground. Yara's voice came through the projection wire. 3 northern streets were burning. Bren had sealed the drains around the clinic. Mira's shelter remained intact. The western gate had opened for 40 seconds before Voss closed it again. Cassian searched the command interface for a hidden cancellation. Every path ended in seal requirements. Brother Caldus had warned him. Hope had made him check anyway. Halbrecht offered a new bargain. Kill me, he said. Cassian turned. My death transfers temporary keeper authority to the nearest compatible candidate. The engine already marks you. You would receive all 7 seals for 1 minute, and the villain system awakens. Possibly, certainly, Halbrecht smiled through the blood. You see? There is always a cleaner murder available if you accept the role. The system was not yet visible, but its logic filled the chamber. Kill the guilty archbishop, gain authority, save the district, and perhaps preserve the dependents. 1 death instead of 39. A heroic equation wearing a villain's invitation. Cassian drew the blade from Halbrecht's robes. The archbishop did not resist. Cassian placed the point against his chest, then lowered it. You want your death to validate the machine, he said. You want me to inherit your choices and call that victory. I want the city to survive. No. You want its innocence to survive. Cassian bound Halbrecht's wrist to the table with a pardon ribbon. The archbishop could not become a martyr if he remained alive to answer questions. 30 seconds remained before the last oil valves opened. The kill lever stood beneath the central sphere. It required no seal. Its makers had included it for catastrophic overload, trusting that no one with access would choose mass consequence without institutional permission. Cassian called the dependent ward. The physician reported 21 stable transfers, 8 uncertain, and 39 certain failures if power stopped. Hell was await now. His mother had told him the truth in words a 6-year-old could understand. A bad machine was keeping him alive, and a man might break it to save many other children. Hell asked to speak. His small voice traveled through the chamber. Are you the bad man? Cassian looked at Halbrecht. I may be. Seraphine says bad people lie about being good. Seraphine is often right. Will it hurt? The physician answered before Cassian could. She promised sleep. Hell asked whether his years would go to the children. The years holding you came from them, Cassian said. They will return. Then tell them I did not steal them. Cassian's voice nearly failed. I will. Hell's mother took the line. Do not use his courage to forgive yourself. I won't. You will try. Then remind me. I will spend my life doing it. The line closed. 10 seconds. Halbrecht watched Cassian approach the lever. This is the moment, he said. Not your grievance. Not your mother's death. This choice. Cassian placed his hand on the warm iron. I know. Chapter 22. A deliberate sin. There are acts made evil by intention and acts made evil by consequence. Cassian's choice contained both. He knew the people behind the glass would die. He knew he was choosing Low Bell because its faces were written deepest in him. He knew a slower, uncertain path might preserve more lives if the Empire honored promises it had never honored before. He knew grief and vengeance influenced the hand he wanted to call rational. He pulled the lever anyway. The first movement required his whole weight. Ancient locks resisted. The engine projected warnings across the air. Hospital collapse, reserve failure, heroic depletion, civic instability. None mentioned donor recovery until Mira's sun token touched the iron. Then the hidden outcome appeared. 2,600,000 living donors would receive return time. The transfer would be incomplete and chaotic. Some would gain years. some only strength. Some damage could not be reversed. Low Bell's stored reserve would return before the cleansing fire completed its circuit. 39 dependent deaths remain certain. Additional risk unknown. Cassian forced the lever to its final notch. The Mercy engine screamed. The sound was not mechanical. Every extracted breath, forgotten birthday, and shortened life passed through the core at once. Gold split along black lines. The 30 rings tore from their silent paths and struck the chamber walls. Halbrecht began a prayer, then stopped because no prayer had language for a miracle confessing. Light traveled outward. In Low Bell, gray vanished from Mira's hair in uneven strands. Children woke with hunger. Workers who had stooped for years stood upright. Not everyone improved. The late enter did not return. Orin remained dead. Restitution was not resurrection. The cleansing oil ignited in 3 streets. Returned reserve met the fire and turned it black. Wren screws opened the drains. The flame collapsed into ash before reaching the shelters. Across the capital, healing effects failed. Physicians caught patients before they fell. Some survived on their own strength. Some died. Heroes lost light mid-flight and dropped onto rooftops. The Emperor's renewed heart stuttered. In the dependent ward, bells began to ring. Cassian heard each one. Lady Sellen's bell had already sounded manually. The first engine bell belonged to Commander Arvin. The second to Maritesh, a violinist whose sister had sat beside her for 11 years. The third belonged to Pel Edrin Arden. Cassian spoke the names as they came. Halbrecht stared at him. Do you think naming them absolves you? No, the fourth bell. The fifth. Black lines gathered before Cassian's vision. They formed a ledger with gold-edged pages. The interface did not praise justice or condemn the engine. It assessed spectacle, intention, harm, and public consequence. Intent confirmed, innocence knowingly sacrificed, sacred symbol destroyed, mass fear initiated, public hatred inevitable, conditions satisfied. The villain system is now online. The words looked exactly as they had in the moment from which the story began. Now the path to them was visible. Every lawful door, every compromise hope, every choice Cassian had made, and every choice made for him. The system opened a first quest. Murder the keeper before witnesses arrive. Reward, dread authority, first ranked. Infamy bonus for execution on sacred ground. Failure, Archbishop Halbrecht retains narrative control. Cassian looked at the blade on the floor. Killing Halbrecht would prevent immediate countercommands. It would satisfy vengeance. It might protect Low Bell. It would also obey the system's first instruction. The 20-second bell rang. Cassian picked up the blade and cut Halbrecht's pardon ribbon, freeing the Archbishop's bound hand. You are coming upstairs, he said. Halbrecht appeared genuinely confused. Why? To explain the machine. Quest failed, the system wrote. Alternative villainy detected. Humiliation of sacred authority. Partial reward granted. Black gold cold entered Cassian's voice. He felt the outline of dread authority, a power that could compel people already afraid of him. The system had rewarded refusal by interpreting it as a different cruelty. That was when Cassian understood its danger. It did not need obedience. It could turn almost any action into the story it wanted, provided the public feared the result. The 39th bell rang. Silence followed. Cassian wrote every name. Then the corridor burst open and Seraphine entered with a broken sword in her hand. Chapter 23. When Mercy died, Seraphine saw the dead before she saw the system. The ward bells were connected to her heroic senses. 39 absences struck at once. She dropped the broken sword and nearly followed it to the floor. Cassian did not approach. Comfort from him would have been violence wearing gentleness. Halbrecht used the moment. He refused the controlled key, the Archbishop said. He chose this. The statement was incomplete, manipulative, and true. Seraphine looked at the gold key still locked in the command table. Then at the single seal. She understood that controlled shutdown had never been available. You began the cleansing, she told Halbrecht, to protect the engine from an active villain. He was not a villain until he stopped it. He was selected. By whom? Halbrecht glanced toward the invisible ledger in front of Cassian. Seraphine could see its light now. The hero system inside her responded with a red gold warning. Adversary awakened. Defeat required. Public faith reward multiplied. Both interfaces wanted a battle at the broken core. Cassian told her so. Then dismiss yours, she said. He tried. The black ledger closed and reopened. Villain status is reputational, not voluntary. The system displayed his initial attributes. Infamy 43, rising. Dread authority 1. Black ledger sight 1. Sanctuary locked. It offered bonuses for taunting Seraphine, striking Halbrecht, or claiming the deaths as necessary. Cassian did none of them. The system awarded patience. Above, the cathedral crowd panicked as golden lights failed. Projection tower showed official messages blaming sabotage. Yara still controlled the hidden relay but lacked an original ledger to display. Cassian had memorized the pages lost in the spillway. The villain system's black ledger ability could see institutional debt. Perhaps it could make memory visible. He asked Seraphine to connect his ledger site to the cathedral projection. You want access to a citywide heroic channel, she said. For 30 seconds. The system will use it. Probably. That is not reassuring. It was not intended to be. Halbrecht ordered her to kill Cassian before his influence spread. Seraphine turned her broken sword toward the archbishop instead. You will stand trial, she said. Before which court? The one he assaulted. The empire he crippled. Cassian remembered his promise to attend if the court remained. The answer might be none. Seraphine placed her palm against the shattered core. Her remaining light entered the projection channels. She extended the other hand to Cassian. When he took it, hero and villain interfaces touched. The chamber disappeared beneath a flood of records. Seraphine saw every name Cassian had memorized. Cassian felt every person she had healed. The systems attempted to categorize the exchange as combat, then as corruption, then as a forbidden alliance. Neither could prevent the connection because both depended on the same engine architecture. Yara opened the relay. Across St. Orison's Cathedral, the golden murals went black. Names appeared from floor to ceiling. Orin Pell. Mira Rook. Meryl Pell. Ileana Rook. Millions more. Beside each name, the stolen days and the miracle that received them, the crowd fell silent. Cassian spoke into the channel. The Mercy engine is dead, he said. I killed it. 39 people died in its final ward, and more may die in the hospitals. Their deaths are not erased by the lives returned. The Empire built this choice, and I made it. You will be told only the first half. Halbert lunged for the command table. Seraphine stopped him. Outside, bells began to ring. Not the dependent bells. Ordinary citizens pulled cathedral ropes, one after another, passing the alarm across the capital. Mercy had died. The truth was alive for 30 seconds. Chapter 24. Villain System Online. The villain system introduced itself with a list of crimes Cassian had not yet committed. Usurpation. Mass coercion. Desecration. Contracted betrayal. Hero theft. Civil dominion. Each category opened into rewards, ranks, and exemplary atrocities performed by earlier candidates. The system presented cruelty as a skill tree and consequence as currency. Cassian closed every page. The system opened a tutorial. Infamy, it explained, was not the same as fame. A person earned fame when others repeated a name. Infamy required the name to alter behavior. A whispered threat closing a market could earn more than a public murder no one understood. Destroying the Mercy engine had changed hospitals, prayers, armies, and dinner table arguments across the empire. Cassian's score continued rising by the second. Dread authority allowed a short command to people who already feared him. The command could not violate physical possibility. Resistance increased with trust, knowledge, and competing loyalty. The system recommended simple words: kneel, flee, betray, kill. Cassian chose none. Black ledger site revealed obligations created by power. When he looked at Halbrecht, golden chains connected the archbishop to every extraction order he had signed. When he looked at Seraphine, threads ran from her healed patients to donor names, but other threads ran from her own sacrificed years back to strangers. The ability did not label either person good or evil. It showed debt without judgment. That made it more honest than the system's quests and more dangerous than ordinary sight. The projection ended. Gold murals returned. Official channels immediately declared the names of villain illusion. Captain Jalen reported that Concord reinforcements were entering the cathedral while Imperial fire teams regrouped around Low Bell. The public had seen enough to doubt, not enough to know. Seraphine ordered Jalen to escort Halbrecht to the Hall of Equal Measure. He hesitated. The Archbishop remained the lawful keeper. Cassian saw fear around Jalen now, dark vapor visible only through the system. A prompt appeared. Use dread authority. Command, arrest the keeper. Reward, institutional fracture. Cassian understood the trap. If he compelled Jalen, every later action could be blamed on villain control. Seraphine's truth would disappear behind his power. Captain, Cassian said without the system, choose whose order you will answer for when the names return. Jalen looked at Seraphine, then Halbrecht. He arrested the Archbishop. The system awarded Cassian manipulation. It will not let you be innocent, Seraphine said. Innocence is no longer an available ambition. Do not become proud of that. They left the core with the surviving ward patients. Pell's mother walked behind a covered bed. She refused to look at Cassian. He wrote her name in the ledger as witness and creditor. At sublevel 7, Concord Knights blocked the archive stair. Their commander announced that Seraphine was compromised and Halbrecht was being abducted by an awakened villain. The official narrative had formed faster than truth could climb steps. Seraphine presented her seal. The commander broke it beneath his boot. The hero system stripped her of 1 rank for loss of public authority. Cassian's system offered to grant him the stolen rank if he defeated her before the knights. He laughed. It was the first sound of amusement he had made since Eleanor died, and it frightened everyone in the stairwell more than a threat would have. Infamy increased. Of course, Cassian said. That is the arrangement. Heroes preserve the machine. Villains attack the heroes. Everyone watches the fight instead of the account. The commander ordered his knights forward. Cassian opened Black Ledger sight. Gold obligations linked each knight to wages, oaths, family treatments, hidden crimes, and private doubts. He could see exactly which pressure would break each person. The system invited him to speak those debts aloud. He selected one command instead, not kneel, not kill. Look, Cassian said. Black gold power entered the word. The knights already feared what the archive contained. Dread authority forced their eyes toward the shelves. For one heartbeat, they saw the donor names written behind their own family miracles. The formation broke. The system called it psychological desecration and awarded a level. Cassian called it evidence. Neither description canceled the other. Chapter 25. 39 bells. The dead did not become quieter because the truth was public. As Cassian climbed through the cathedral, the Black Ledger repeated the names of the 39 dependents. It offered no quest. It simply refused to close their accounts. Martesh, violinist. Commander Arvin, Order Defender. Pel Edrin Arden, 6, lover of blue kites and enemy of Care Soup. Dr. Vaisam, who had treated cholera without charge. Ord Ansel Grieve, who had evicted 400 families. Tima and Leerosal, sisters who had survived the same carriage crash and lived 6 borrowed years together. The list contained generosity, cruelty, childhood, regret, and ordinary unfinished days. The system calculated 39 direct kills. Cassian refused the category. He had not struck them, yet his decision ended their support. The distinction mattered legally and felt obscene personally. He wrote, deaths knowingly caused by destruction of the mercy engine. The system accepted the wording and increased his infamy for claiming responsibility. Seraphine watched the number rise. It feeds on confession. It feeds on consequence people believe belongs to me. Then deny it. Halbrecht will deny the donors. I will not answer his lie with mine. At the dependent ward's upper exit, Pell's mother finally turned. Her name was Emil Arden. She had worked as a teacher before Pell's birth and spent 6 years beside his bed. She carried his blue scarf wrapped around both hands. You promised to tell the children he did not steal their years, she said. Cassian opened the cathedral speaking channel. Official guards had disabled the public feed, but the villain system offered an infamy broadcast, a black gold whisper that could reach anyone currently afraid of him. Using it would spread fear. It would also fulfill the promise he accepted. Across the capital, people heard Cassian's voice from dark windows, extinguished hospital lamps, and the hollow spaces behind bells. He named the 39. He said none had built the engine by needing it. He said patients were not thieves because institutions made stolen survival the only survival available. He said the dead from Low Bell and the dead from the ward belonged in the same account, not on opposing sides of the slogan. When he reached Pell, his voice faltered once. Emil heard. "Do not perform grief for me," she said. "I am not. You are performing it for yourself." He considered and found some truth in the accusation. The broadcast led him to find the act before his enemies did. Naming victims was moral duty and narrative strategy. He could no longer separate them cleanly. "Then I will stop speaking," he said. Emil looked toward the families listening. "Finish the names." He did. The broadcast earned enough infamy to unlock a SIN contract. The system proposed a bargain with Emil. She would become his official accuser, empowered to sense his lies in exchange for protection from imperial retaliation. The price to Cassian would be permanent pain whenever he concealed the death caused by his orders. It was the first system offer that resembled accountability. That made it suspicious. Cassian showed Emil the contract. Only he could see that until he'd invited her. The terms appeared in black gold air between them. "Does it force me to forgive you?" she asked. "No." "Does it stop me killing you?" "No." "Does protection extend to the other families?" Cassian amended the offer. The system raised the price. Every protected family would count as a vulnerability enemies could exploit. Harm to them would weaken his powers. He accepted. Emil signed with Pell's blue scarf around her hand. The contract burned into the black ledger. The system called her the villain's first creditor. Emil called herself a witness. Cassian preferred her title. Chapter 26. The first dread command. The cathedral nave had become a battlefield without battle lines. Festival worshippers crowded the exits. Concord knights guarded the altar. Hospital families searched for relatives as golden healing marks faded from their skin. Above them, the projection windows alternated between official denials and fragments of Yar's stolen ledger feed. When Cassian entered from beneath the altar, the crowd recognized him. Fear moved through the room like wind through grain. The villain system translated that fear into possibilities. Command the crowd to riot. Command the knights to kneel. Command the gates closed and harvest panic. Every option carried infamy estimates. Cassian saw something else. Oil pressure from Low Bell had rerouted through cathedral fire lines. Halbrecht's officers intended to burn the archive beneath them if they could not preserve it. The ignition mechanism sat behind the western night formation. Seraphine tried to warn the commander. He ordered archers to aim at Cassian. One arrow would begin a sepede. Hundreds might die before the archive burned. Cassian used dread authority. "Still," he said. The word entered everyone already afraid of him. Thousands of bodies froze for a single breath. It was not paralysis. Each person felt their own fear take physical weight. Archers held strings without releasing. Running feet stopped. A crying infant alone remained unaffected. Cassian crossed the nave during that breath and pulled the ignition cable from the wall. The command ended. Panic returned twice as strong because people now feared the loss of their own movement. Infamy surged. The system praised efficient mass coercion. Cassian climbed the broken altar and raised the disconnected cable. "This would have burned the names you saw," he said. The commander called it an illusion. Yara's voice answered from the projection balcony. She showed the matching fire order, bearing Halbrecht's seal and Voss's counter-signature. Voss entered through the eastern doors with Imperial guards. He had left Low Bell after ordering the pump stopped, but only when the engine's collapse made cleansing pointless. He saw Halbrecht in chains, Seraphine without a seal, and Cassian standing above a crowd that had just experienced his command. "You have proved every warning they made about you," Voss said, "and you proved mine before I had power." Voss offered the crowd a simple story. Cassian had sabotaged the engine, killed patients, corrupted Seraphine, and projected fabricated records. Whatever flaws existed in the Mercy system could be reformed after order returned. It was a better story than the truth because it had one villain. Cassian felt the role waiting. If he denied every charge, Boss would force Seraphine and the donor families to carry the argument. If he accepted blame, the city might listen long enough to examine the ledger, but the villain system would grow. He chose the role with conditions. I destroyed the engine, Cassian said. I knowingly caused 39 deaths in its ward. I used power on everyone in this nave without consent. Arrest me after the founding ledger is open and Lobel's gates are released. Boss did not answer the conditions. You hear him confess. You hear me name what I did, Cassian replied. Now ask why your lawful order burned 3 streets. The crowd turned toward Voss. For the first time, fear moved away from Cassian. The villain system warned that falling personal fear would reduce dread authority. It recommended an execution. Cassian broke the altar's golden sun instead. Inside it, hidden black pipes carried donor energy to the hero days. The crowd saw the mechanism. Infamy rose higher than an execution would have earned. The system was learning his preferences. So were his enemies. Chapter 27. Hero at the broken altar. Seraphine stood between Cassian and arrest. It was the image the systems wanted, though not the direction. A fallen hero defending an awakened villain created confusion neither interface could reward cleanly. Boss ordered Imperial guards to take them both. Concord Commander Rel ordered his knights to recover Halbrick. Captain Jalen refused Rel. The nave divided into overlapping loyalties. Seraphine raised her empty hands. No one attacks. Her hero system had reduced her rank, but people still trusted the woman beneath it. Many knights lowered weapons. Commander Rel did not. He invoked the Concord's adversary protocol, declaring Cassian a city-level villain. The protocol transferred emergency authority from compromised heroes to the nearest loyal commander. Golden Reserve flooded Rel's armor from hidden stores the engine's collapse had not reached. Black Ledger site showed the source, years held in military batteries, extracted from frontier prisoners. The Mercy engine was dead, but its stored theft remained. Rel attacked Cassian with a spear of condensed daylight. Seraphine intercepted it. Her weakened shield cracked. The collision hurled both heroes across the altar. The villain system offered Cassian stolen virtue if he defeated Seraphine publicly. It wanted him to attack the person protecting him because conflict between assigned roles produced the greatest energy. Instead, Cassian used dread authority on Rel. Remember, he commanded. Rel feared his own past. The command found that fear and opened it. For 1 second, he remembered every prison examination he had supervised and every donor he had called necessary. The daylight spear faltered. Seraphine struck the military battery in his armor. Golden years burst outward, seeking their original owners. Rel fell, alive and suddenly ordinary. The crowd saw hero and villain fight the same man. Both systems issued errors. Halbrick laughed. You think contradiction frees you? He called. It feeds them. Every side chosen, every fear raised, every victory witnessed. Hero and villain are not morals. They are engines for attention. Cassian turned Black Ledger sight on the cathedral itself. Threads rose from the crowd's fear and hope into 2 invisible columns, gold above Seraphine, black gold above him. Both flowed toward a reserve chamber deeper than the Mercy core. The systems had survived the machine that powered miracles. They were using public conflict to rebuild. Stop watching us, Cassian told the crowd. It sounded ridiculous in a cathedral full of danger. Look at the records. Look at the pipes. Look at the orders with signatures. Heroes and villains are roles designed to make power personal. Do not give your judgment to either interface. The system punished him. Cold drove through his broken fingers. Dread authority flickered. Seraphine understood and removed her white cloak. She laid it on the broken altar. Do not believe me because I am a hero, she said. Believe the names you can verify. Her golden column weakened. Cassian removed Tomas's watch badge from his glove and placed it beside the cloak. Do not believe me because I oppose them. Record what I did as carefully as what they did. His black gold column weakened too. For a moment, the cathedral contained people rather than an audience. Yara used that moment to open the archive doors. Brother Caldas carried up the first original ledger. Then another. Nurses, clerks, workers, and dependent families formed a chain, passing unburnable records into public hands. Voss could not call millions of physical names an illusion. He could still call Cassian a murderer. Cassian did not dispute it in the nave. Emil Arden stood below the altar with Pell's scarf. She would dispute any lie he told himself later. The trial had moved out of the tribunal. The entire city had become the jury. Interlude. The city between rolls. For 30 seconds, the capital saw the names. For the next 30 minutes, it argued about whether seeing had happened. Official broadcasters called the projection a hallucination. Hospital workers recognized account numbers and began copying them by hand. Wealthy families searched for the donors behind their treatments. Poor families searched for relatives classified as fuel. Street preachers declared Cassian a demon. Other preachers declared him an instrument of judgment. The systems harvested every confident interpretation. In a bakery near the cathedral, a woman named Residorn discovered that the healing which saved her husband came from 6 prisoners. She closed the shop and went to the prison office. Her husband followed, carrying bread because neither knew what apology could mean. At the northern barracks, a soldier named Ivan saw his daughter's name under charitable wards. He had enforced examination lines for years. He removed his uniform, then put it back on because the uniform still opened the gate he needed to free her. At the Emperor's palace, ministers debated whether truth existed if released through villain power. None asked the donor families, who were already gathering outside. The city did not divide cleanly into believers and deniers. People believed the part that protected something they could not bear to lose. A patient might accept the theft and reject Cassian's right to end it. A donor might hate the engine and still call Cassian a murderer. I can coordinate my condemned Halbrick while fearing a world without heroic reserve. Messy judgment produced less energy for the systems than simple allegiance. That was why official language sharpened. Hero. Villain. Miracle. Terror. Order. Plague. Every word attempted to reduce a network into 2 opposing faces. Seraphine felt the pressure through her fading interface. Hero quests appeared one after another. Restore public hope by defeating Cassian Rook. Protect the innocent by preserving remaining reserve batteries. Prove the projection false through ritual combat. The objectives named real needs. People needed hope. Reserve batteries still supported patients. Public certainty could prevent riots. The quests arranged those needs so attacking Cassian became the only visible action. Seraphine declined. Her system displayed images of frontier villages under attack. Without heroic reserve, she might not reach them in time. Refusal had consequences beyond moral purity. She sent messengers to ordinary cavalry instead. Slower help left within the hour. Some villages would still suffer. The system called the delay her fault. She accepted the portion that was and rejected the claim that obedience would solve the machine beneath it. Cassian faced the mirrored pressure. The villain system offered to seize reserve batteries and distribute them through SIN contracts. That might save hospitals while making every patient debtor to him. It offered to destroy the batteries publicly, increasing infamy enough to strengthen Low Bell. It offered to expose each hero's private hypocrisy, converting institutional inquiry into personal scandal. He refused the easiest paths. Then he secretly marked the location of every battery for later capture. The system rewarded strategic avarice. Cassian told himself he needed them to protect Low Bell. The explanation was credible and incomplete. Possession would give him leverage over hospitals, heroes, and provinces. He wanted that leverage because he no longer trusted anyone else to act in time. This was how villainy entered good reasons, not by replacing them, but by becoming difficult to separate from the desire for control. Emil saw the marked locations through their contract. Were you going to tell us? She asked. Yes. Pain did not strike, which meant he believed the answer. When pain struck, Cassian showed the district council immediately. Meanwhile, Magistrate Boss sat in an imperial carriage outside the cathedral and read emergency reports. The cleansing had failed. The engine was dead. Halbrecht was in chains. Voss could flee, join reformers, or preserve enough authority to prevent uncontrolled reprisals. He chose authority. He ordered donor records protected and Cassian arrested. He ordered Lobel's fire teams to stand down, then authorized force if they refused. He suspended 3 officials who had concealed deaths and promoted 2 who had done the same more discreetly. Voss did not think of himself as defending the old order. He thought he was managing transition. That belief made him more dangerous than Halbrecht's certainty. Yarra's printers captured his orders. They published them beside earlier statements. Citizens could see a man adapting language while preserving control. At the Western Hospital, doctors faced patients losing mercy support. Some demanded the engine be restored at any cost. Others disconnected voluntarily when they learned the source. One patient attempted to harm a donor family in anger. Nurses stopped him. There were no pure constituencies. Only people absorbing a truth at different speeds. When Cassian told the cathedral crowd to stop watching heroes and villains, some obeyed. They looked at ledgers, pipes, and orders. The energy flowing into both systems weakened. Others watched harder. They wanted Seraphine to defeat him or join him. They wanted Cassian to execute Halbrecht or forgive him. Ambiguity felt like danger. Spectacle offered relief. The paired interfaces fed on that relief. For a moment on the broken altar, Seraphine and Cassian saw the same underlying reserve. Hope rose through one column. Fear rose through another. Both became power for a system that needed conflict more than justice. They could not destroy it in one night. They could refuse the scene it requested. Seraphine laid down her white cloak. Cassian laid down Tomas's badge. Neither act made them ordinary. Public memory had already assigned roles. But the gestures opened enough space for nurses, clerks, workers, and families to carry the real ledgers into the light. The city between roles entered history through hundreds of hands. Later monuments would show only 2 figures at the altar. The first monument was proposed before the cathedral floor had been cleaned. A council faction wanted Seraphine carved in white stone crushing a black serpent with Cassian's face. Another wanted Cassian holding a broken gold sun over kneeling heroes. Both designs converted evidence into worship. Mira submitted a third design, an empty table covered in ledgers, surrounded by ordinary chairs. No faction liked it. Yarra printed the rejected sketch across Lobel. Families added names to the empty chairs. Hospital workers added instruments. Prisoners added broken sun tokens. The image changed with each copy until no single artist controlled it. That was the form public memory took when it resisted the systems, incomplete, corrected, and difficult to place beneath one person's feet. Voss attempted to ban the image as adversarial propaganda. The ban multiplied it. Seraphine refused to endorse it, knowing heroic approval would turn it into another official icon. Cassian wanted to fund the printing and stopped when Emil asked whether he intended to purchase the memory of his own trial. The city learned slowly. People still preferred faces. Children played hero and villain and Alice, switching roles when one grew boring. Merchants sold black gloves and white cloaks. Spectacle survived every revelation because spectacle was enjoyable. But beneath it, councils began asking the question Mira wrote years earlier. What did the miracle cost, and who was allowed to agree? The question had no level, title, or glowing reward. It spread anyway. Mira would spend years correcting them. Chapter 28. Trial by public memory. Truth did not defeat the empire in St. Orsan's Cathedral. It made defeat arguable. Citizens opened the original ledgers and found family names. Hospital physicians matched transfer codes to treatments. Soldiers recognized prisoners. Nobles discovered that some of their own children had been classified as donors after political disputes. The system was larger and less orderly than a single conspiracy. Thousands of officials had followed a piece without understanding the whole. Hundreds had understood enough. A few had designed it. That complexity became the empire's first defense. Voss argued that decentralized harm proved no central criminal intent. Halbert argued necessity. Concord commanders argued national security. People who feared losing treatment argued survival. Each claim contained truth. Cassian used black ledger sight to connect the claims. The ability spread through the projection lenses. Golden lines appeared across the cathedral, linking orders to transfers, benefits to extractions, denials to erase names. Viewers could follow a single child's missing month through ministries until it became 6 seconds of heroic reserve during a parade. The lines did not tell people what to think. They prevented institutions from hiding the whole by defending fragments. The system awarded Cassian narrative dominion. He refused the title and kept the power. That distinction would trouble him for years. Voss stood beneath the projection of his own signature on Plague Order 7. The order linked to 3 burned streets and 42 injuries. No one had died because the engine returned reserve in time. I delayed execution, Voss said. I prevented a worse commander taking control. You also signed, Cassian replied, to remain where I could limit harm. That sentence built the engine. Voss looked older than he had in the tribunal. And your refusal killed 39. Yes, the simple answer silenced people more effectively than defense. Cassian asked Emil to read the dependent names. She did. After each, a family member added something the ledger did not contain. A profession. A habit. A hated food. A promise unfinished. Then seller read the donor dead. Oren's fear of being written as old. Meryl's habit of carrying injured neighbors. Leander's insistence that names began care. The two lists met in public memory. No official could convert either back into acceptable numbers without witnesses objecting. At dawn, the Emperor's Council issued emergency decrees. Plague Order 7 was suspended. Lobel's gates would open after medical inspection. Halbrecht and Voss would enter protective custody. A reform commission would audit Mercy accounts. The council also ordered Cassian arrested for sabotage, coercion, terrorism, and 39 counts of unlawful death. Seraphine said she would guarantee a safe trial. Cassian intended to surrender. Then Black Ledger Sight revealed the arrest orders hid in branches. Upon custody, he would be classified as a system adversary and transferred to a concordant chamber. The public trial would occur only after memory treatment. The council wanted his confession without his continued ability to connect debts. He showed Seraphine. She could not see the hidden branch without touching his system interface. When she did, both systems drew energy from the contact again. If you flee, she said, they will say every record came from villain corruption. If I surrender, they will make me confirm it. Then we take you to an independent court. Which court can keep the Concord out? Neither knew one. Lobel sent a message through the cracked bell relay. Imperial fire teams had ignored the suspension and were regrouping outside the western gate. Tomas's watch officers could hold for minutes. The district remained in danger because paper authority and armed authority had separated. Cassian looked at the open cathedral doors. Guards waited beyond them. The villain system offered escape routes, hostage strategies, and a throne quest. He selected none. He asked the people of Lobel whether they wanted him back. The answer came through thousands of raised hands visible on Yara's district projection. Not worship. Not forgiveness. Consent to protection from a man they now understood could become dangerous. The system unlocked Villain's Sanctuary, Chapter 29. The man everyone hated. Cassian escaped the cathedral in full view of the city. Secrecy would have made him a fugitive. Visibility made him a symbol. He walked through the eastern doors with Seraphine on one side and Emil Arden on the other. Concord guards could not attack without striking a hero and the mother of a dead child. Cassian hated the calculation even as he used it. Black Ledger Sight showed every protective relationship as leverage. The system taught without needing to speak. At the bridge to Lobel, Seraphine stopped. If I cross with you, the Concord declares me fallen. If you remain, it calls you compromised until you obey. Those are not the only choices. No. But they are the choices it prepared. Seraphine looked back at the cathedral, where citizens still carried ledgers into daylight. Her place was there, protecting the records and forcing the public inquiry to continue. Cassian's place was at the gate before fire teams entered. They did not call themselves allies. Seraphine promised to arrest him through a court that could preserve memory. Cassian promised to attend if she found one. And if I stand in your way? She asked. The villain system offered 3 threats. Then I hope you understand what you are protecting, he said. Seraphine heard the unsaid danger. That was almost a threat. I am practicing restraint. Practice harder. They separated. News outran Cassian. Official broadcasts named him the Mercy Butcher. The legal prince named him the Ledger King. Some low-belt residents called him Meleanor's son. Hospital families used worse names. Each title added or subtracted infamy depending on whether it changed behavior. At the western gate, Imperial soldiers had formed ranks around sanctified fire engines. Tomas stood chained beside Voss's deputy, used as leverage. The deputy offered exchange Cassian for Tomas in the district evacuation. Tomas shouted before his son could answer. Asked to see the route. There was no route. Black ledger site showed the evacuation order ending at donor sorting tents. Cassian projected the hidden branch onto the gate. Soldiers saw that their instructions included separation of children and disposal of resistant adults. Some lowered weapons. Others accused Cassian of illusion. The deputy put a blade to Tomas's throat. The system urged Cassian to command kill. Fear already filled the soldiers. He might turn half against the others. Instead, he commanded one word: choose. Dread authority could not create morality. It forced frightened people to experience their choice as immediate rather than procedural. The youngest officer removed Tomas's chains. The deputy cut him across the shoulder. Tomas drove his head backward, breaking the man's nose. Low-bell watch officer surged from the wall. The Imperial line fractured without a general massacre. Cassian reached his father near the gate. Tomas looked at the black gold light around him and understood before explanation. What did it cost? He asked. 39 in the ward. Others in hospitals. I do not have the full count. Did you know? I knew 39 were certain when I pulled the lever. Tomas closed his eyes. Cassian waited for condemnation or forgiveness. His father offered neither. Then you carry them, Tomas said. And you do not make Mira carry you. It was almost Leanor's instruction. The Imperial fire engines opened. Streams of sanctified flame crossed the bridge toward Low Bell. Returned years protected individuals, not buildings. The district would still burn unless Cassian activated Sanctuary. The ability required residents to accept protection from a declared villain with knowledge of his acts. Cassian climbed the Iron Gate. The city watched. He named himself the Mercy Butcher because victims used it. He named the 39. He named the coercion in the cathedral. He said the system rewarded fear and would tempt him to rule by it. If you accept my protection, he told Low Bell, do not call me good. Build the means to stop me when protection becomes ownership. Hands rose across the district. Not everyone raised one. The system counted only informed acceptance. It was enough. Chapter 30. Villain Sanctuary. The barrier over Low Bell was the color of a bruise around gold. It rose from the iron gate in a widening arc, passed through rooftops without harming them, and closed above the cracked bell tower. Black gold ledger lines formed its surface. Every consenting resident appeared as a small point of light. Every refusal appeared as an open gap the power curved around rather than consuming. Imperial fire struck the dome. The night became orange. Cassian felt the attack through every person under his protection. Fear strengthened the sanctuary, but only while residents believed he stood between them and the threat. The system offered a simple way to increase power. Let one fire stream breach, plow casualties, and harvest greater dread. He rejected it. The barrier weakened. It wants us frightened, Mira said to the district relay. She ordered people away from windows, not because hiding was safer, but because watching the fire fed attention into both systems. Families gathered in clinics, workshops, and cellars. They read names from the mercy ledgers aloud. Fear became grief, anger, and practical work. The sanctuary changed. It drew strength not from panic alone, but from knowingly accepted protection. Residents who understood the bargain reinforced it by organizing fire crews, carrying water, and challenging Cassian's orders when necessary. The villain system issued a correction. Sanctuary variant discovered Covenant Dominion, lower obedience, higher resilience, reduced infamy yield, system recommendation, suppressed dissent. Cassian laughed again. No, he said. The barrier held. Imperial soldiers abandoned the fire engines one by one. Without operators, the last streams died against the dome. Dawn appeared behind smoke. Low bell remained. People cheered. The sound rolled toward Cassian on the gate, and the system translated it into a coronation prompt. Claim title, Lord of Low Bell. Establish first villain domain. Reward, permanent sanctuary. Send contract expansion. City scale dread. Cassian declined the title. The system asked for an alternative. Mira's voice came through the relay. Temporary emergency clerk. The district laughed. Cassian accepted. The system spent several seconds deciding whether the humiliation counted as villainous irony. It granted the sanctuary anyway because people believed the arrangement. The gates opened from inside. Residents approached the abandoned engines and disarmed them. Cassian ordered captured soldiers treated at the Foundry Clinic. Emil Arden organized dependent families into an independent record council. Sella took charge of donor testimony. Yar seized the district printing works and immediately published a notice warning that Cassian's statements required verification. It was the least obedient villain domain in Imperial history. That did not make it safe. Black Ledger site gave Cassian knowledge no one else possessed. Dread authority could still force a room. Sanctuary tied the district's defense to his reputation. Even with councils and witnesses, power concentrated around him faster than rules could form. Tomas insisted on a district charter before sunset. Mira demanded that Emil hold authority to expose any concealed casualty. Yara demanded access to every system contract. Bren wanted Cassian barred from the oil pumps. Cassian agreed to all four. The system offered hidden clauses that would let him override them during crisis. He did not tell anyone at first. Pain struck beneath his ribs. Emil's contract sensed concealment tied to potential deaths. Cassian told them. Emil smiled for the first time, without kindness. Useful. The witnesses removed every override they could identify. Cassian allowed it while part of him resented the loss of efficiency. That resentment mattered. A man who feels no temptation deserves little credit for refusal. Cassian's desire to control outcomes had not vanished with victory. It had acquired a supernatural interface in a frightened population. He stood beneath the cracked bell as Low Bell rebuilt fire breaks. Mira returned her sun token to him. The fraction on it was gone. She looked healthier. Those 6 stolen years had not all returned. You did something terrible, she said. I know. And something necessary. I don't know. Ed. She embraced him once, then stepped away before either could mistake love for absolution. Beyond the sanctuary, the capital prepared its answer. Chapter 31. The Black Ledger. By noon, the Auric Empire had 2 official histories of the night Mercy died. In the first, Cassian Rook was a foreign-trained saboteur who corrupted a hero, murdered hospital patients, and terrorized the capital with false visions. The Mercy engine had suffered repairable damage. Citizens were urged to remain calm and report anyone repeating donor propaganda. In the second, issued by Seraphine Veil under her personal seal, the engine had extracted life without informed consent. The founding ledger was genuine. Archbishop Halbrecht remained responsible for the system and Cassian remained responsible for destroying it while patients depended on it. Seraphine called for public courts independent of both hero and villain influence. Cassian wrote a third account. He began with Oren Pell and Eleanor's clinic and ended with the Sanctuary Dome. He included every decision he could verify, including his own failed assumptions. He listed the 39 direct dependent deaths and 47 additional hospital deaths reported by afternoon. He did not claim those figures were final. He included 3 deaths among Low Bell residents during the raid and cleansing attempt. He named injuries caused by his command in the Cathedral Panic. The Black Ledger ability allowed the record to resist alteration, but at a price. Every time Cassian added an institutional debt, the system tied that debt to his reputation. If people trusted the ledger, his power grew. Accountability and ambition became inseparable. He published it anyway. Yara transmitted the pages through printing presses rather than system broadcasts whenever possible. Ordinary copies could be questioned, annotated, and corrected. Magical certainty was another kind of throne. Across the empire, donor communities opened charity offices and demanded records. Prisoners rioted when black gold transfer marks appeared on walls. Some hospitals closed. Others negotiated direct voluntary support. Heroes split between Seraphine's Reform Call and the Concord commanders. The border armies, suddenly deprived of reserve, began retreating. Halbrecht had not lied about external danger. Creatures from the Ash frontier crossed abandoned forts by evening. Villages that never benefited from the Mercy engine now faced the consequences of its collapse. The system offered Cassian his first major campaign, Rise of the Arch-Villain. Objective: exploit Imperial weakness, seize 3 districts, defeat hero Seraphine Veil before witnesses, and claim the capital. Reward: authority to rewrite 1 law of the Black Ledger. Alternative objective: allow the frontier to fall, increasing fear until the Empire begs for villain protection. The crueler option was easier. It always would be. Cassian declined both and sent low-bell engineers to help the frontier forts. The system classified the aid as territorial expansion through debt creation. It can make villainy out of soup, Mira observed. They stood in Eleanor's ruined clinic. Volunteers had repaired the clean table. The wall panel still held the brown patient ledger, protected from the raid by the same loose brick Eleanor used decades earlier. Cassian placed his black ledger beside it. Tomas entered with news from the capital. Voss had escaped custody. Halbrecht had been moved by loyal Concord Knights. Captain Jalen disappeared while protecting the original archive. Seraphine retained public support, but the hero system was offering ranks to anyone who denounced her. The conflict was not over. It had only become visible. Emile arrived carrying Pell's blue scarf. She had compiled 87 names connected to the engine's collapse. Your number was low, she said. Payne moved through Cassian's contract. He added the new reports. It will keep rising, she told him. I know. Do not say that like knowledge is payment. He nodded. Outside, the cracked bell rang. Workers had repaired the clapper, but not the fracture. The note remained rough, now strong enough to cross the district. People gathered beneath it for Eleanor's burial. Cassian carried his mother through streets protected by a power born from her son's worst act. Residents watched with gratitude, suspicion, anger, and hope. Every emotion fed the system differently. At the grave, Cassian read the names of the dead before speaking hers. He made no vow to become good. Goodness had become too useful a word for hiding cost. He vowed to remain answerable, which was smaller, harder, and possible to test. That night, a final black gold page opened before him. Villain designation accepted by public consensus. Arch-villain path available. Heroic opposition assigned. Seraphine Veil. System convergence in progress. Cassian looked west toward the cathedral. On its highest balcony, Seraphine stood beneath a failing golden halo, reading the same conflict from the other side. Neither raised the weapon. Between them lay a city that wanted one to be the monster and the other to be the answer. Far beyond the capital, the first consequence of their refusal was already moving. A frontier governor received Cassian's engineers and arrested them as villain agents. The village behind his fort had one night before the ash creatures arrived. Seraphine could reach it only by accepting a hero quest that required her to denounce Low Bell. Cassian could protect it only through a sin contract that would place the village inside his growing domain. The paired systems had learned to build cages out of urgent needs. Mira studied the frontier report and proposed a slower answer. Send the repair plans without Cassian's name. Ask ordinary riders to carry them. Let the village accept help without pledging to a villain or waiting for a hero. The plan offered less power, less certainty, and no dramatic victory. It might arrive too late. Cassian approved it. Then he secretly prepared the sin contract in case it failed. Emile's mark burned beneath his ribs. He disclosed the contract to the council. They allowed it only if the village requested the bargain after seeing its full price. Cassian agreed while the system calculated how desperation would shape consent. That was the future waiting in part 2. Not a sudden transformation into evil, but 1,000 emergencies in which control looked kinder than delay. Cassian had a reason for every weapon he gathered. The reasons were often good. The weapons did not care. On the cathedral balcony, Seraphine received her own frontier quest and saw the same trap from the golden side. She sent riders by the northern road. Neither knew the other had chosen ordinary messengers. For one night, without alliance or trust, hero and villain made the same imperfect decision. Cassian closed the page. For now, the Black Ledger would continue in Part 2, The Kingdom That Needed a Monster.